Warrior Lore. Chapter 379, Mad Dipper's Showcase of Power. Chapter 379, Mad Dipper's Showcase of Power. Hi. Luo clan's ice and fire lords are nothing to look at either. The shadows let out ghastly laughter while the other black men looked on from a distance. Qiu Yinhai and Xue Qingjian were startled yet being unable to accept the situation. Charged at them for another attack. It was utterly ridiculous how some profound heaven cultivators were mocking two 8th layer radiant stage experts. Ice and fire surged once more towards the shadows, but it merely phased through them and made a loud bang far behind them. Those shadows weren't even real to begin with. The two jerked back, to which the shadows cackled louder and sharper. With the blow of an eerie wind, it was now the shadows' turn to go on the offensive with their glinting curved blades. Boom. The duo sent blows all this time, but not even one was of use. They couldn't lay a finger on them. As the shadows drew closer, they shot silver lights at them, forcing the tense couple back. A moment of carelessness was enough for one of the lights to land, dissolving their clothes. It was this close to poisoning their bodies too that only got the two of them even more frightened. And while they were pulling back, the shadows grew cocky with laughter and movements. Qiu Yinhai and Xue Qingjian grew grave, unable to block the shadows' advance. And there were still many more of those black men glaring over as well. Li Jingtian watched it all with a cold, trembling eye. Their cultivation method is like those pygmies' unity tactic, but not quite. The four scheming demons, every move matched flawlessly, in tune with each other, while these guys fought by themselves. There was no mystical art behind it to allow them to phase in and out of reality either. It ought to have the same weakness either way. Li Jingtian's eyes flashed with resolve. The power couple had had enough, by the looks of it. Xue Qingjian cursed back, oldly. What are you standing around for? Do something. Ah! Xue Qingjian cried, getting scared by a curved blade flying at her neck. Qiu Yinhai was distressed, yet he was blocked by 6 shadows himself. All he could do was watch his dear wife get skewered. Li Jingtian roared. They have no bodies. Use soul attacks. The couple woke up to this obvious truth. Of course. We're radiant stage experts while they're only in the profound heaven stage. Killing with intent may not do them in, on account of their strong souls, but it should give them a pause. 2 hums later, a pulse flashed past Bam. Like a tidal wave, it flung the black men dozens of meters back. The effect perked up the two. They were finally getting somewhere with removing these creepy guys. But it also stunned them as to how these profound heaven shadows had such strong souls. The duo's powerful souls were unable to even make them pause, and only push them back. Nevertheless, they could see a solution to their headaches, restoring their calm while they were calm. The enemy was deadly calm as well, not one bit fazed about the fact that their weakness had just been found out. Fall in. From among the calm black observers, one aged and hoarse voice came. The cackling shadows gathered together as they linked. They formed a giant net, floating in the sky as more of them joined. Their soul power surged. Squinting, the couple turned grave as they stepped backward. They had felt it too. The shadows' combined soul power had reached the radiant stage. Unity tactic. Li Jingtian gasped. The black men laughed in pride. A soul unity tactic, to be exact. One made particularly with radiant stage experts in mind. He. Get ready. Attack. The shadows snickered and released a sound at Qiu Yinhai and Xue Qingjian, who were balking under the pressure as they pulled back. They fought back with their own souls. Much good did that do. Their soul attacks against the shadows' combined attack was like a breeze against a wall. The two panicked, sweating buckets. What's with these guys? They're way too creepy. No matter what they did, it proved to be pointless. Life and death art then? They had tried it earlier and it didn't do a damn thing. A stronger attack, but still very much physical, that left backing up more and more the only choice, leading to their increased vexation, and lead to the growing joy of the black men, cackling like victors. Whoosh! Li Jingtian flashed in front of the couple, facing the incoming shadows. Elderly, what are you doing? Qiu Yinhai shouted, grinning. Li Jingtian's eye shone. He, isn't it obvious? Shutting them up. With jumping eyebrows, the couple was still clueless when Li Jingtian made a sign. Staring at the shadows, humph, ignorant whelps, a Luo clan's elder isn't someone you can understand. Wraith style, third move, Necro-dragon screech. Roar. Li Jingtian's roar sent the surroundings rumbling, the image of a dragon charged with claws and fangs bared, ready to tear anything to pieces. The shadows only noticed when the dragon was upon them. Boom. The explosion shook the entire mountain range and cracked the land. The shadows' perfect formation scattered like flies. They had no time to make sense of it as they blacked out. Falling to the ground, the shadows scattered. A singular strike wiped out a dozen shadows, laid to rest for good this time. It's a soul martial art. Look out. The black men moved back, losing their previous cool and watching Li Jingtian with trepidation. Unlike the ice and fire lords, Li Jingtian actually posed a threat, sticking his chin out. Li Jingtian laughed, full of himself. Anyone else? The black men looked at each other and started to make tactical steps backward. Yun clan was overjoyed. Seeing ice and fire lords at a severe disadvantage had them more than a little worried, and then came Li Jingtian, in the nick of time, dispersing the shadow net in a single strike, easing their worries. All in all, their safety was assured. As for the couple, they felt sour looking at Li Jingtian stroking his ego. With so many witnesses, they didn't look the part of elders, unlike Li Jingtian. It was a humble pie neither of them wanted to taste. Old Li, you're really something to know, even a soul martial art. How come we've never seen you using it? Xue Qingjin grumbled, prickled by envy. Li Jingtian scratched his nose. Hee, you don't have to be jealous. When we joined the Luo clan, Steward gave each of us a matching art. Each of us has our own strengths. I was also enticed by that life and death art of yours, but can I train in it? Necro-dragon screech is a sound martial art, but it is a body martial art at its core. Since you two train by combining fire and water, this art doesn't seem to fit you, does it? The two paused. He does make a fairly good point. They got over it just as fast as they had gotten jealous. Old Li, you deal with them while we bring up the rear. Xue Qingjin looked at the people and said, let's end this quickly. No problem. Li Jingtian laughed and shot up. The black men fell back farther in fear of Li Jingtian's gaze, but a cold shout fell from the black cloud above. Humph, ignorant whelp, you're awfully confident in your parlor tricks. The enemy this time was so strong, it had forced them to join hands, making them feel excited and dreadful. With a flick of his wrist, the black captain pulled back the chain and nodded at Li Jingtian. Junior, not bad at all. You're still breathing after taking a hit, so you do have some skill after all. Humph, arrogant punk. Li Jingtian shouted, you may be strong, but are not in the ethereal stage yet. There's not a single peak radiant stage expert out there who can kill me in one blow. His front was tough, but his insides were quaking. That chain almost took his life. The tiniest slip would have had the chain run through him. The black captain shook his head with a smile. Welp, are you that ignorant or in denial? Two people may have the same cultivation, but not the same talent. That alone translates to a huge gap in power between them. Huangpu Qingtian was the prime example, and now it's your steward's turn. At merely the third layer of profound heaven stage, he took two peak radiant stage experts all-out blows. It actually reminds me of an old rival of mine. I would feel privileged if I could experience Steward's masterstroke myself. The black captain sighed at the sky. Strolling down the memory lane, the three elders never let him out of sight. Well, this has nothing to do with your Luo clan anyway. If it were up to me, I wouldn't be facing you so soon either. The black captain waved and said, please step aside. Elders, I am taking the Yun clan. Get bent. If I just give them to you, I won't even be able to face the world with shame. Xue Qingjin snapped, shooting for him with Qiu Yinhai. Fast behind, the two were on him in a blink, striking his chest with their combined power, fire and water fusion, life and death art. Boom! With a flash of heat, a white jet shot through the black captain's chest and shot into the distance. It then enlarged into a huge glaring light. Everything was burned to a cinder with a bang. The black chain clattered on the ground, and with the dying of the light, the power couple started panting. There was no one in front of them. The two had finished him off. The two smiled, and the Yun clan cheered. Li Jingtian grinned as well, but the black men's gaze made him think twice. Damn it. Because they were unfazed, their confidence was justified as well. While the couple celebrated, a familiar laughter came. Ha ha ha. Is this the Luo clan's martial art? Quite impressive, I must say. Today I've truly lived and learned. It's something I have never seen in my life. I see why so many experts got turned on their side. That move might have worked on them, but now? SSS. Black smoke gathered in the form of a person and then a suit of armor. The black captain was back with a smile. I am neither man nor shade, but in between. The same move won't work on me. The two's hearts seized. They should have known this by now. With the black men turning into black smoke to avoid physical attacks, their captain ought to follow the same logic. The earlier move was merely a test run to see if it had any effect, and indeed it didn't, and with the captain being far stronger than his men, it went without question that he could phase in and out as well. The black men had a hard time becoming real once they turned into shadows, while the black captain could do it at will. He was a true undying monster and a pain to deal with. The couple gnashed their teeth and fell back far too late. However, the black captain's wave brought the chain to his hand, and then it shot towards the couple. The two went flying with blood trailing from their mouths. They hit the ground hard, grievously injured. Humph! I warned you of this outcome. But since you struck first, you only have yourselves to blame. The cold eyes flashed in the darkness as the chain went for the two again. Li Jingtian covered himself in black energy and shot to intercept. Wraith Style's first move, soaring demonic dragon. Roar! With a black dragon image around him, Li Jingtian clashed with the chain, but it shattered his dragon. Li Jingtian was flung into the air and spat blood, falling to the ground. He looked lifeless. At least he had covered for the power couple by sending the chain away from them. You too. Cough, this is as far as I can help you. Li Jingtian was panting, blood seeping into the ground around him. Qiu Yinhai nodded in gratitude. Old Li, you're a true friend. Yun Clan was in tears, unknown if from fear or from the touching scene. Li Jingtian and the Ice and Fire Lords were usually at odds with each other, but when it came to fighting, neither left the other behind. The black captain paused. Then his tone turned angry for the first time, and he snarled, "What camaraderie? Mad Dipper, since you want to save them so badly, you can die first." Whoosh! The black chain came for Li Jingtian to finish the job. Qiu Yinhai and Xue Qingjian struggled, but couldn't budge at all. Li Jingtian sighed at the black chain reflecting in his eyes. Is this how I, the great Mad Dipper, would meet my end? Without even knowing who killed me? Ice and Fire Lords stared enraged, their fists clenched. But in times like these, one particularly familiar voice lifted their spirits. Yo, Spade, were you perhaps left for dead to find the Luo clan's bromance so revolting? Chapter 381, Divine Eye of the Void's Third Stage. Chapter 381, Divine Eye of the Void's Third Stage. With a spatial ripple, an odd red glow shot in front of Li Jingtian before the black chain could land. The chain whistled back with a bang, deflected right back at the black captain. Squinting, the black captain heard a buzzing in his ear, and he groaned as he blocked the chain. What he didn't take into account was the monstrous power infused within the chain. His block did nothing to stop the chain from knocking his arm into his chest like a cliff had been smashed into him. The black captain flung backwards with an explosion. A hill that was a mile out crumbled, filling the sky with dust. The only sign something ever happened was the deep groove in the ground leading to it. It took everyone's breath away. Everyone was very clear about Black Captain's strength. Not even 3 great Radiant Stage experts could topple him, but for this dreaded man to be blown away, how terrifying would his opponent be? All eyes snapped to Li Jingtian. He was still hanging by a thread, but now a cold figure stood before him, his white hair drifting in the wind, right hand flashing an eerie red and eyes cold as ice. Luo clan steward, soaring demonic dragon Zhuofan. The black men grew tense as they looked at him, their faces twisting slowly. They had all heard of Zhuofan's illustrious name, but seeing him was believing. What they had failed to grasp was the demonic dragon's power to push back their captain. It boggled their minds. They knew their captain better than anyone. Yet Zhuofan had flung that monster away in one hit? How is that even possible? The black men turned to the rubble behind them with hope. Captain? SSS. Black smoke seeped from the rocks, reforming into a shadow. After a few more seconds, the armor took shape as well. Returning back to his earlier daunting figure, the black chain flew back in his hand with a wave. Just what is that thing? Zhuofan's brow rose. Li Jingtian gasped. He saw Zhuofan calm but still advised, Steward Zhuo, watch out. He can phase in and out of reality. Normal martial arts don't work on him. The only way to fight him is with soul attacks. There is such a thing? In that case. His eyes flashed and Zhuofan gave him a deep look and laughed all of a sudden. Having everything figured out, elderly, you guys rest. I'll take it from here. Zhuofan walked on with a thin smile. The black captain did the same, dragging the black chain behind. The clanking sound announcing his enemy's eulogy. The audience never left the two out of their sights. Their very lives depended on the one who came on top among these powerhouses. You cannot lose, Captain. The black men pumped their fists. Yun clan and Luo clan's elders looked at Zhuofan's back with faith. The elders had complete trust in Zhuofan. Having been around him for a long time, anyone or anything that stood in this little freak's path would stop their marching. He had never lost when he was weak, so how could he lose now when he was at the peak of Tianyu's power? No one dared to blink, lest they miss the two's clash tap. The two stopped 30 meters away from each other. Zhuofan sized him up and snickered. The girl's intuition sure was spot on. The other faction even sent someone like you. I thought elderly and the two elders would be more than enough. Haha, how naive of me. You never wanted the Yun clan to fall into someone else's hands. The future of Yun clan is crucial to all factions. It cannot be left to the Luo clan alone. The black captain gave him a cold look, flicking the chain with a trembling hand. That punch sure was savage, reminding me of an old rival of mine. Zhuofan curled an eyebrow. A no-brainer for him to guess who this old rival was. He mocked the black captain. Did you win or not? Shuddering, the black captain flashed with unbridled rage. His fists clenched and he spat. I lost that day, but don't think this match will be the same. That remains to be seen. Zhuofan snickered. Unlike him, I am far more complex, not to mention a headache to deal with. Are you that certain of victory? Ha ha ha. The black captain's hand tightened, and he flung the chain towards Zhuofan's left side. Laddybuck, see for yourself. The black chain snaked in the air and was at the left side of Zhuofan's face in a blink. Sneaky and swift, the chain was out of reach of the right hand, fully grasping Zhuofan's weakness in one glance. You old fox. Zhuofan grinned, being mentally prepared. This guy had only seen him use the right hand once and already knew to stay clear. The attack on his left side spoke volumes of this guy's experience. Facing such a guy half-assed would give you a one-way trip to hell. And thinking that facing him even full-assed would be a pain, Zhuofan had to take it seriously in any case. While the black captain knew Zhuofan's right arm was tough, the guy was clueless that his left arm threw a mean punch all the same. With a groan, the nimble chain landed in a dragon claw. The black captain cried, Earth Dragon Claw? Hee hee, right on. Zhuofan mocked him and yanked the chain. The black captain went with it, making a half-circle in the air before crashing into the ground. Hard the bang left another 1,000-meter-wide crater. Zhuofan grinned. The Yun clan was jubilant and the black men panicked. Captain? Whoosh. They didn't get to finish as the black smoke shot from the crater straight for Zhuofan. Li Jingtian's side was shocked. Steward Zhuo, look out. Only soul attacks work on that thing. Hee hee, I know. Snickering, Zhuofan made a sign and roared. Wraith Style's third move, Necro Dragon Screech, Purple Lightning Flare. Roar. Unlike Li Jingtian's dragon image, Zhuofan's dragon was melded with purple lightning, the same lightning Zhuofan stored in his divine eye of the void. For some odd reason, his purple lightning stock was restored when he cultivated. It was endless how convenient that it happened, just in time to deal with this pesky black captain. This was Heavenly Emperor's purple lightning we are talking about. A power above Yuan Qi, and the same one that had struck a sacred beast dead. It doesn't matter if it's soul or flesh, they'll both get skewered. With how Zhuofan used it in tandem with a sound martial art, this attack had turned into a literal killing move. Bam! The black smoke was poised to attack Zhuofan when the dragon reached him. He had yet to regain his bearings from the previous hit, and the purple dragon slammed into him. Next, the purple lightning pierced the black mass, drilling in excruciating pain into the skull of the black captain. Then came the constant rumbling from the impact of lightning on every part of his body, akin to explosions from within. All the audience heard was an endless cry of agony. as the black captain rammed himself left and right like a headless chicken. By the time it all came to an end, the shadow reformed, but on all fours, panting from exertion, the black men were shell-shocked. Not for the life of them could they recall when their captain was in such dire straits. Tuoba snickered. Spade. Now do you know the difference between me and him? Hi. Everything in this world has a weakness. Don't think for a second that your phasing body will get me exhausted from using only physical attacks. Humph. I know all too well just what kind of specimen you are. It would have been another matter entirely if you were in the ethereal stage, but it just wasn't meant to be. Humph. Enough with the theatrics. What can a mere spirit puppet do? Why, you know. Eyes trembling, the black captain watched Tuoba like a monster. This is a secret art that was lost 5 centuries ago. How? I'm just that clever. Slanting his head, Tuoba showed a cocky grin. Soul puppets are special, but not invincible. You may not have a body, but I have my own way to make sure that you'll stay dead. You showed off in my presence, and you beat my men. Don't even think of escaping. Tuoba cackled, and 3 golden halos shone in his right eye, divine eye of the void's 3rd stage, Mirage world. Chapter 382, Mirage world. Chapter 382, Mirage world. An unnatural space ripple spread around, and the black men and their captain saw the world twist before their very eyes in a blink. Their view was replaced with endless white light with nobody else in sight, bewildering array. Black Captain cried, Impossible! When did you set it up? Ha, that's private information. Tuoba faded in with a twisted smile. Spade, turning into a spirit puppet gave you a brilliant escape route. A spirit puppet can fade in and out of reality, neither man nor shade. While elusive, at the same time, you don't have a body. Your soul has nowhere to hide, making it easy to just poof you out of existence. One other thing, your soul sense is 100 times more acute than a normal person. An advantage, yes, but not when it comes to experiencing pain. Tuoba punctuated by stabbing the horrified black captain with a blade. A wail like no other echoed. Black Captain was soaked in sweat and crumbled to his knees. His eyes were full of fear towards Tuoba. Tuoba had another blade flash in his hand and casually went for his back. This time the Black Captain jumped back. Just when he thought he was in the clear, the pain came, and so did the shrieks. Looking back, he saw a bright longsword stuck in his back. The same one Tuoba had. Try not to dodge. You'll only waste your energy. With a wide grin, Tuoba said, Didn't I tell you? Having 100 times more acute soul sense is not all it's cracked up to be, especially when it comes to pain. Props for figuring out this is an illusion, but in here what's real and fake have been switched. And guys like you, who use phasing as an escape, will find themselves much weaker than anyone else. Not to mention the time here is slower. I may have taken my sweet time poking you twice, but outside, it hasn't been a second. We've got all the time in the world to enjoy. Here everything's an illusion, while outside the pain is real. But the moment you cave in is the second you will die. Tuoba sported a twisted grin and flicked 4 blades into Black Captain's chest, getting him acquainted with a world of pain. This was Tuoba's illusion, his world. In this world, he made the rules. In here, he was God. The Black Captain was unstoppable outside, while in this illusion he was being toyed around like a powerless doll, and when the pain proved to be too much for his mind to handle, his soul would just fly away. This was Divine Eye of the Void's 3rd stage, Mirage world. A place where Tuoba created and controlled everything. This breakthrough in Divine Eye of the Void came somewhat fast, having lacked the needed soul power to achieve it. But through the refinement of the Sea Phantom wings, the strange power of the wings resonated with Mirage world. Leading up to a wonderful coincidence, this also happened to be the straw that broke the back of the pesky Black Captain and his cronies. Outside the illusion, wails echoed out, jerking the people from shock as they blinked at the prideful shadow. Tuoba was just standing there as well, facing the previously outstanding black men as they rolled on the ground shouting in agony. Like they're getting friggin' tortured. Just how big a gap in strength is there? Steward stays true to his reputation as a monster. The elders were dumbstruck. They knew Tuoba was awesome, But this was a bit outrageous. He flipped the tables with just a glare. Yet the glare still wasn't over, and the enemies writhed in pain. The trio looked at each other and sighed. They were Luo clan's elders, Zhuo Fan's backup. But the kid had outgrown them, entering a totally new realm gazing at the high and mighty white-haired figure. The three sighed. The little freak is so fast. Not even our ass-kissing can catch up. How would they know that the Mirage world was sucking Zhuo Fan off soul power? He may look cool standing there, his 3 golden halos flashing in the right eye, sending the enemies into a world of hurt, but his brow was soaked, his mind raving. These damn rotten bastards can still take it? I've got 3,600 blades poked into them, yet they just won't die. This must be the fruit of the torturous training they do each day to build such grit. Just as he finished that thought, a black man held his head with a groan, rolled around 100 times on the ground, kicked his legs at some point, and then just laid there in the real world. Black smoke drifted out of armor. The gear clattered to the floor. Empty Zhuo Fan grinned and spat. It's about time. These spirit puppets are at their limit. Case in point, after the first shadow keeled over, a second and third were bound to collapse, leaving behind empty armor. Some didn't even get to fall. Their souls gone like the wind in mid-fall. Zhuo Fan eased his breath. The fewer they were, the lesser the strain on his soul. It didn't take long for the hundreds of black men to sputter in smoke, leaving the captain, still hugging his head with a clenched jaw. Zhuo Fan snorted with a wet brow. His soul was reaching his limit, his vision blurred. But he hung on, holding the black captain in the Mirage world. Just a little more and he's done for. Zhuo Fan smiled and sighed, his knuckles white. Whoosh! A pebble shot for Zhuo Fan at breakneck speed. So small yet containing the power of a mountain, forcing Zhuo Fan to take a pause. Yet Zhuo Fan had 2 aces with him, his beastly fists, any one of which could deal with such a feeble threat. His right hand moved and caught the pebble. But it proved to be enough of a distraction for the Mirage world to break the black captain since the real world and jumped through the crack. Steward Zhuo, the guy's escaping. Li Jingtian shouted. Zhuo Fan's right eye flashed with 2 golden halos. Divine Eye of the Void's second stage. Void Annihilation. Whoosh! A spatial ripple shot for the captain. He turned into smoke trying to dodge, but when Void Annihilation passed through him, he felt an agony like never before. Even being a spirit puppet, he couldn't avoid the effects of space cracking. His soul was jolted and wounds laced his mind. The captain cursed inside. What kind of a freak is he? He has so many fancy and powerful tricks not even that guy can match. Boom! Void Annihilation ran through 3 mountains before taking to the sky. Zhuo Fan was about to send another one. Black Captain was too scared to take any more blows like that and turned into black smoke, drifting among the Yun clan. Zhuo Fan held back, lest he harmed innocents. The Black Captain laughed, having found his window, flying closer to the people. The crowd shrieked as he trapped a 19-year-old kid in his smoke and fled. Help me! The youth peed in fright, shouting his lungs out for help. Zhuo Fan frowned. Spade, let him go. Yun clan is under Luo clan's protection. Harm him, and we will become mortal enemies. Humph, do you take me for a fool? You'll kill me regardless. The Black Captain shouted. Zhuo Fan, you got me this time, but we will meet again. See you around. The Black Captain turned into a black wind and wrapped tighter around the wailing youth. He was gone. The next second Yun clan watched in worry while Zhuo Fan stomped. He looked positively annoyed. Except for that vague quirk on his face, the Black Captain was long gone. Yet Zhuo Fan looked at the clouds. Still, Yun clan was touched by his desolate back. Steward Zhuo is working so hard for us. He is so heartbroken at the loss of one child. Having rested all this time, Li Jingtian was feeling better. He propped his weak body up and sighed. Steward Zhuo, you don't have to blame yourself. He only got one man. Claptrap, who's blaming himself here? Zhuo Fan snorted. The kid is already an adult, yet he hasn't even awakened his blood. A waste? It makes no difference if he's gone. But we are here to look good for the Yun clan, so we can't harm their people. That sadness and self-blame routine is there to make them respect us more. Yun clan will be far more willing to follow us now. Li Jingtian's face twitched and he nodded. Steward Zhuo is Steward Zhuo. He will never change. He is clearer than anyone about what to do for his own interests. Chapter 383, Spirit Puppet. Chapter 383, Spirit Puppet. My apologies, everyone. I could not protect you all and let that fiend take someone. I am ashamed. Zhuofan gasped and said in a heartbroken tone, watching them with a painful look. Li Jingtian next to him felt his face jump around from all the twitching. For the sake of Luo clan's future, Steward has curbed his mean streak to win their hearts, or that black captain would never have gotten away even with a hostage. Yun clan bowed in gratitude. Steward Zhua, please, you don't have to say it. If not for you, all of Yun clan would have ended in misfortune. You have no reason to feel remorse. It should be us thanking you instead. But what we don't understand is what could have happened for us, who look after the people, to incur such a disaster. The Yun clan shook their heads. Zhuofan hit a snicker, bearing only his laments. The world is fraught with evil. Even if you are innocent, the tallest tree always gets the wind. Yun clan is a special clan that everyone has their eyes on. Now more than ever, with the imperial capital saturated with scums of society, many clans are coveting the Yun clan. Startled, the Yun clan reflected on these words, then sighed with remorse. They knew now that it was their bloodline that had brought this calamity. Who didn't want to proclaim themselves king, who didn't want to see fate, to act by the heavens' will? But they had the imperial family's protection over the last millennium to curb these thoughts, and when all the top dogs gathered in the imperial capital, they could feel the noose tightening on their throats. It started with clan head Yun Xuanji, a show of the culprit's cruelty and savagery. They did not know who did it, but one thing was clear. Staying put would have been obliteration. Clueless as they were, the herald of their calamity was the one in front of them. The demon-turned-savior, Steward Yun Xuanji, ended up dead because he had forsaken his neutral ground and exceeded his standing. It had nothing to do with the rest of the clan. It was actually Zhuofan who incited fear in them, coercing them to flee into his asylum. Yun clan was made up of simple people who were not sharp enough to guess Zhuofan's multi-layered machinations. So seeing that Yun Xuanji trusted him, they did the same and fled. But who was the Yun clan? They literally birthed the high priest every generation. They guided the development of the nation and its policies, and now that they had run away with Zhuofan, who the hell would answer all those riddles and conundrums? Zhuofan had just stolen their baby, from right under their nose. Hence, as a result, black shadows rained from the sky. All they wanted to do was to guide the sheep back in their pen, but with how their savage act worked only to stoke the dread in Yun clan, and Zhuofan's timely arrival had saved their future, it only pushed Yun clan closer to the Luo clan. Snickering in his mind, Zhuofan put on a particularly heavy look. People, be at ease. As long as Luo clan stands, for the sake of my friendship with Sir Yun Xuanji, I will definitely take you to the safety of Windgaze City. That is where you will never have to worry again. Thank you, Steward Zhua, for saving us and for everything. We will never forget this. The Yun clan bowed deeply. Zhuofan waved them off, his grin growing so much that it threatened to split his skull. Please, you don't have to do that. You can trust in my clan. My only wish is that you remain in our domain. Ha ha ha. Through promises, vague threats, and nudges, Yun clan had become his die-hard lackey. As if the only one in the whole wide world to save them from doom would ever be Luo clan. However, among those who wanted the Yun clan for themselves, Zhuofan was the first to act, stealing them from the imperial family's jaws. After a few more pleasantries, Zhuofan took out a vial of recovery pills for the elders. It took them 6 hours to stabilize their wounds. Zhuofan was in no rush to return. He'd only leave when the elders were at least in their peak state. Steward Zhua, I heard you call them spirit puppets. What are they? Li Jingtian inquired. Zhuofan derided. A bunch of sorry-ass, lame-ass losers. No one would willingly become a spirit puppet unless forced into a corner. The power couple frowned, looking at him all serious. We all know that only by reaching the ethereal stage can one's mind and soul fuse, allowing them to shed their bodies. Even if the body crumbles, you can just possess another. The three nodded. However, what do you think will happen if the body dies before reaching the ethereal stage and the soul lingers? Will it still survive? Zhuofan said. The three shook their heads. The soul can last for 100 days at most, then dies. Li Jingtian's firm answer came. Zhuo Fan nodded. It would be fine if it were. But the demonic path has a secret art allowing experts beneath the ethereal stage to wander around as their souls, surviving on the spiritual energy of the world. Hence the name spirit puppets. The three sharpened their ears, hanging on to every word. The name says it all. They are puppets of the spirit world. Once a should-be-dead person is refined into a spirit puppet, to say nothing of their soul never growing stronger, he would roam the world as neither man nor shade. A zombie pretty much sums it up. Unless one is consumed by revenge and hatred, one would rather die than choose such a pitiful existence. It is a downright disgrace. On top of that, a spirit puppet has to consume souls to maintain their yuan qi. A truly vile secret art. It hardly matters if they meet me, a demonic cultivator, but stumble upon a righteous cultivator, and those overzealous warriors of righteousness would chase them to the ends of the earth. It is part of their job description and also earns them merit. It does wonders for their mentality, tempering their hearts. The three blinked in understanding. Shui Qingjian then asked, "Something is off here. Steward Zhua, you just said that those filled with immense regret and hatred would turn into spirit puppets, but we just faced hundreds of them. There's no way for there to be so many warriors knowledgeable of this art and be so consumed with revenge. It's too much of a coincidence." "Ha ha ha, those mass-produced goods aren't included," Zhuo Fan cackled. "The other side is amassing a secret army, forcing cultivators into becoming spirit puppets." To Tianyu, who has never seen a shadow of an ethereal stage expert, and with so few martial arts focused on the soul, spirit puppets would be a headache to face. It is a blessing in disguise that they are so hard to make. Not anyone can become one. The slightest slip-up, and it'd be the end. Elderly, you know how the kids old Pang is training in the Wraith art have a low success rate? Well, this one is even lower. Haha. Li Jingtian was stunned ever since joining the Luo clan. Captain Pang, and he had received close training in the same art. Of course he knew about the young guard's Luo clan was rearing as well. For one guy to come out of a batch of 100 was already promising, but with the spirit puppet's chance of being created even lower, isn't it the same as Zhuo Fan wiping out 100,000 strong army of theirs by killing those hundreds? Li Jingtian had a sour taste in his mouth. Zhuo Fan laughed, seeing through him. "You don't have to worry, they have plenty more where that came from." "Ha ha ha. But Steward Zhua, you have no trouble dealing with them while we are hopeless. Teach us how." Shui Qingjian noticed Zhuo Fan's casual attitude and cutely said. The others looked on with hope. It was tough to say if it was from their incapability to deal with spirit puppets or from the need to learn more of Zhuo Fan's secrets. Sticking so close to Zhuo Fan for so long had taught them that his bag of tricks ran deep, in both quality and number. Far better than the entire Tianyu could ever provide. Nabbing one or two of them was the greatest fortune the trio could ever hope for. This was one of the reasons these experts were so casual about staying with Luo clan. To say nothing of a martial fanatic like Li Jingtian, who practically lived for power. With how Zhuo Fan had had his head deep in official matters, and being lazy on top, he felt disinclined to teach them. Today was the best chance to squeeze something out of him, and they weren't about to miss it. Glancing at them, Zhuo Fan smiled. "No need. Spirit puppets are merely at the 3rd level. Low-level spirit puppets are soul-based, no different from a wraith. With your strong radiant stage strength, your intent is enough to destroy them. Mid-level spirit puppets can enter weapons or armor, making them their vessels and using them to somewhat resist soul attacks. Like those black men. You can't one-shot them, but giving them a deep wound is still easy. The crucial thing is the Black Captain, a peak-level spirit puppet. He can phase in and out, with a soul so strong that only a specialized martial art can defeat him." The three bobbed their heads, like eager children. "I reckon strong guys like him are limited to just him. And since I've harmed him, he won't be showing his face anytime soon. You can rest easy." Zhuo Fan waved his hand. The three got his gist and sank into depression. "The kid doesn't want to teach us." Shui Qingjian pouted, shaking Zhuo Fan's hand in a bratty voice. "Steward Zhua, we can forget about these crotchety geezers, but what about little old me and my precious body? Who am I to blame if that miscreant scars it? If you are that scared of having your secret leaked, sister will visit you in the dead of night. Will you teach me then?" Smiley face. "Secret here can also mean a cheat/hack." Zhuofan's face twitched at Xue Qingjian's rosy cheeks. Sister Xue, please have a modicum of dignity and act your age. Your man is right behind you. Hee, Steward Xue. Why are you being so testy? We're all on the same side. I don't mind. If you still find it lacking, I can join you as well. So will I. Qiu Yinhai exposed a disgraceful grin, followed by Li Jingtian's shout. Ugh. Zhuofan almost had a case of the Technicolor yawn. Waving all over the place. Fine, fine. I'll take it as my loss. I'll teach you something. A profound ranked martial art focused on souls. Finger of Death. Chapter 384, Shadow King. Chapter 384, Shadow King. Who? Black smoke floated by a waterfall in the mountains. It reformed into the crooked shape of the black captain. As he gasped for life, he was still holding onto the kid who was now unconscious, ignoring the hostage. He took a gulp from the stream. With a crack, like that of a gear turning, the waterfall slowly came to a stop. The pond had a vortex in the middle, draining the icy water to reveal the muddy ground and a stone gate 10 meters below. Black Captain jumped in with the kid and pushed on some ostensibly random stone for the gate to rumble open. The gate closed behind him as he entered, with the sky-high waterfall resuming its flow and the pond filling back up again. The captain hobbled through the pitch-black, twisting path. Even with all the jolting, the kid never woke up. A faint candle light sprung in the distance and the captain hesitated, but then walked on even faster in the glum room, around 60 square meters in size, skipping a torturer's tools of the trade being laid around. A golden sheet ran through the center, dividing the room in two. Plop. The black captain threw the hostage down and knelt before the cloth. I have failed you and await my sentence. You failed? The aged voice from beyond carried shock. For even you to fail. Sigh. The sighing black captain was lost for words, as well his eyes dimmed and he collapsed. The voice came again. And you're also wounded? Whoosh. A black flash reached the black captain before the aged voice could, giving the captain a pill when his breathing evened. The man with a bamboo hat eased a breath and said at the curtain, Please relax, sir. Senior has sustained heavy injuries and only needs time to heal. What? Heavy injuries? The old man was astounded. Just who is capable of harming you to such an extent? Not even Gu Santong could do this. The man behind the veil was quite aware of Black Captain's specialty, of phase in and out. He couldn't deal with Gu Santong, but that little freak's ridiculous strong arm could do nothing just as well. There's actually another person in Tianyu that can rout him besides Gu Santong. The Black Captain sighed. It's Zhuofan. He has that kind of skill. Ha ha, and more to spare. Even I had to step in but played right into his hand. The captain sounded morose. That brat is a deadly combination of an extended range of skills and ample experience. I used to think my secret art was lost 5 centuries ago, that no one in Tianyu knew of it. But he saw through me with a glance, and then toyed with me. I only escaped with my life by taking one of the Yun clan's members hostage. The captain sighed, his eyes consumed by dread. He'd been running amok across Tianyu for centuries, yet a pipsqueak like Zhuofan showed up, robbing him of all repute and turning him into a bottom feeder. Zhuofan is an even worse headache than Gu Santong. The captain sighed. Gu Santong is all brawn, but does have weaknesses. While Zhuofan not only has Gu Santong's savage power, I couldn't find any weak spots either. It's the first time I've met with such an opponent. The man in the bamboo hat nodded. Senior is correct. Without having seen him for myself, I would have never taken Zhuofan to have such unbridled strength. All of the senior's attempts were foiled. He then used some unknown art to trap Senior and almost cost him his life. Knowing my limits, my only hope was to make a distraction. I am glad to know it helped free Senior. So it was you who helped me. I wondered why his focus slipped. This gratitude I will surely return. The black captain cupped his hands at the bamboo hat guy, who only shook his head. He had only added that little tidbit to get some credit. It's fine, now that you know I did my part. Just remember me next time you split fees. As for revenge and whatnot, it was the farthest thing from his mind. The veil fell quiet for a long time before the voice returned. The others? Black Captain sighed. Dead? By your hand? By Zhuofan's. Black Captain squinted and spat. He is truly savage, killing them on the spot and saving me the trouble. Ha ha ha, he didn't do it for you. It is a warning. He doesn't want a falling out and win easy on us. The voice behind the veil came. The two were clueless and the voice explained. With Zhuofan's guile, it would be easy for him to track you down. Since he wasted all of them, it proves that these men had no use to him, that he knows all too well who we are but does not want to expose us. What? The two were dumbfounded. The veil flew aside, and the emperor in his golden dragon garment walked out. Not just him. After the high priest died, Zhuge Changfeng and Long Wucheng soon casted their suspicions on us. Why else would they support each other in court today when I wanted to deal with the Regent estate and Zhuofan in one move? They feared I would swallow them both. I underestimated you, Zhuofan. Your mind is sharp, your nature adaptable. Like water under the bridge, you set it all aside, uniting with your foes. You are a man with perspective. The emperor's cold laughter came. Hidden within was a thick trace of bloodthirst. The bamboo hat fell and revealed the monochrome chess sage. Sima Hui looked hard at the emperor. Your Majesty, what do we do about Zhuofan taking Yun clan to Windgaze City? The Shadow Guard's first detachment was wiped out and Senior is heavily damaged. How do we stop Zhuofan and the Luo clan's 3 elders? That is the source of my anger. The emperor flicked his sleeve. I just can't make anything of Yun Xuanji's decision of relinquishing a 1,000-year-old neutrality by siding with the Luo clan who he has had no relation to speak of. And for what? For Zhuofan? I thought I showed my forbearance when I closed my eyes to him reading Huangpu Qingtian's fate, because I knew the throne is 3 parts fate, 7 parts hard work. I am a true celestial dragon, the son of heaven. I don't fear the likes of Huangpu Qingtian coming to take my rightful place. Yet he had sided with Zhuofan? And what did Zhuofan do? The man had just died, and his first order of business was to take the Yun clan away from my grasp. A selfish prick for whom the thought of giving a funeral never even crossed the mind. How can he trust Cough? The emperor's raving stopped and a coughing fit. Sima Hui took a hanky and tended to the emperor. When he took it back, there was blood on it. Your Majesty, Sima Hui cried. The emperor waved. It's fine. I can reign in Tianyu long enough to leave a successor. The emperor took a deep breath to calm himself. Shadow King, you are one of the 4 pillars of my absolute trust and the most secretive being in this world. Everyone who has ever met you has long since died. With one exception, Zhuofan. Fate, it seems, isn't reliable, but can't be thrown aside either. The kid is your bane, so make sure to stay as far away as possible. But, Your Majesty, Shadow King complained. The emperor waved. Zhuofan is a snake with outrageous power. The only way to get rid of him is by turning him into a beacon in all the chaos. Sigh, now all rests on my planning. I only wanted to raise a tiger to tear into those savage beasts and strengthen my position. Yet instead I've reared a dragon, and worst of all, a dragon I can't control. Zhuofan, ha ha ha, he is a true combination of Gu Santong and Zhuge Changfeng. He is the greatest plague on my mind. The emperor sighed, a glint flashing deep in his eyes. Shadow King and Sima Hui nodded in the end. Zhuofan's power and threat left all of them coming empty-handed. Was one of the 3 minds of Tianyu. Devious in ploys and tricks, that easy to topple? Was someone with hands as tough as Gu Santong's, equipped with crazy skills to make even Shadow King dumbstruck, going to keel over just like that? Someone well-rounded like Zhuofan, versed in brawn and brain, left all his enemies feeling they were chewing a rock. Chapter 385 with me. Chapter 385 with me. The emperor showed worry and turned to the unconscious Yun clan member. Bring out the other eye and see if it holds. Understood. Shadow King lifted the kid up and his other hand flashed, revealing a bloody eye. It was now that the kid decided to join the party. Looking at the 3 in panic, who are you? What are you doing? Humph, we're just giving you the opportunity to become the new high priest. Shadow King snickered as his closing hand reflected in the eye of the distraught youth. Before he gouged it out, the wailing and pain commenced. Yet the kid was unable to move an inch. Shadow King then placed the other eye inside the kid's socket and forced the wound to heal. Blood stopped leaking, and the new eye fused with its new host. The trio nodded at the handiwork. Their joy was short-lived as the youth howled like a banshee under the trio's shuddering eyes. The kid thrashed all over. His new eye turned into a black sphere. It released a black energy that infected his body in a flash. The kid became black as night and crumbled to ashes along with the eye. Like I thought, eaten away by the mystical eye. The outcome came at no surprise for the emperor, but that didn't mean he accepted it. Frowning, he sighed. Yun Xuanji's mystical eyes can't be grafted into others, leading to the host being eaten from within. But to think that it won't work even on his people. The Yun clan will have to first awaken their blood to bear these mystical eyes. Nodding, Sima Hui sighed. Your Majesty, it makes sense. Yun clan wouldn't have survived for so long if anyone could use them. Everyone would have been scrambling for their eyes otherwise. The emperor nodded. Quite so. But that only leaves Holy Maiden Yun Shuang as a reader of fate. And she is now with the Luo clan. Your Majesty, you are the one and uncontested ruler on this earth. A true dragon descended on earth. As she belongs to the Yun clan, she will one day fall into your hand. Sima Hui bowed. The emperor paused in thought and said, if only. Meanwhile, Zhuofan looked after the elders' wounds while also teaching them the finger of death. After 10 days under his careful guidance, the three recovered and were on the road again. While he backtracked to the region of Prosterity's compound whoosh, Zhuofan flashed inside the manor, finding with his soul sense that all were accounted for and safe. No one used my absence to cause a scene at Luo clan while I was out helping the Yun clan. He knew all too well that a delicate balance was in play and that no player wanted it askew. It was also the most peaceful period, Steward Zhua. Zhuofan turned his head at the charming voice, finding Yun Shuang running to him frowning. Zhuofan saw her distraught and asked, Miss Shuanger, what is it? Yun Shuang bit her lip, stammering, Steward Zhua, you already know who killed grandfather, don't you? Quivering on hearing this, Zhuofan held her gaze. Who told you that? It doesn't matter. What matters is that you do. Yun Shuang's gaze was set. Her tone firm. Zhuofan ignored her and pondered before bursting. Ha ha ha, I get it now. It must be that pair of old coots giving me a hard time. Humph, they don't want to stick their neck out so you fake innocence here, is it? Your time will come, that I promise. Zhuofan knew on the spot that Zhuge Changfeng and Leng Wucheng had a hand in this. They both knew Zhuofan wanted the Yun clan and Yun Shuang. Yet they nudged her into demanding an answer from him. If he refused, Yun Shuang would be cross with him. It might even drive her to regent estate or prime minister. If he told her the truth, Luo clan would become the first to clash with the imperial family. The pioneer to throw all this balance out of the window. He was at an impasse. Steward Zhua, you actually do know, don't you? Yun Shuang guessed as much from his tone. Then tell me. Why should I? Zhuofan cut her off. Your clan is a target that I am willing to protect. In layman's terms, you owe me, not the other way around. What gives you the right to question me? To tell you everything? Humph. Hysterical. Zhuofan snorted and left. Yun Shuang rushed to block his way, begging, Steward Zhua, what will it take to tell me? Zhuofan stared down those hopeful big eyes of hers. He spoke after a pause. You really want to know? Yun Shuang nodded, her gaze steeled, grinning. Zhuofan leaned in her ear, his breath tickling and her face aflame. It will depend on your behavior. I have no reason to tell anything to someone who isn't with me. Yun Shuang shuddered, then watched him incredulously and flushed with red-hot cheeks from humiliation. So this is who you are, Steward Zhua. Someone who preys on others' weaknesses. Biting her lip, Yun Shuang teared up. Zhuofan snickered. You got that right. I am no goody two-shoes. Besides preying on others, my style includes, but is not limited to, robbing someone blind, using their plight and kicking them when they're down. So, do you accept it? Zhuofan looked like the big bad wolf out on the prowl for harmless little lambs. Yun Shuang's biting of her lips drew blood. Her hands tense from the inner conflict. She sighed. Steward Zhua, give me time to think. Sure, take all the time in the world. I'm in no hurry. Zhuofan's lazy tone came. Cocksure everything was at his fingertips. Yun Shuang glared and stormed away. Zhuofan noticed her eyes just before leaving, filled with rage, and scratched his head. Well, that's odd. Didn't I just tell her to watch the stars, to be my advisor? What's so hard about that? She must be dead set on ironing out all my crookedness. Then she'll help me. But have you ever heard of a kind demonic emperor? Humph. Zhuofan grinned. On his way to Luo Yunhai. It's been too long since I gave the future clan head a lesson. How long will it take to shape him up? Well, it's not like I have anything better to do, so I might as well teach him some more. Not like I can leave the clan's fate in the hands of an ignorant kid. I'll never know rest. He got to the region of Prosperity's room, only to find it stacked with gifts. Luo Yunchang and Princess Yongning were there too. Chatting away, Brother Zhua, you're back. Luo Yunhai beamed. Luo Yunchang giggled, while Yongning raised an eyebrow. Zhuofan, took you long enough. What could have kept the great steward away for so long anyway? Luo clan was swamped with work the past few days, and, in your absence, I had to go out of my way to help you all. Don't just stand there. Hurry up and thank me. Zhuofan's face twitched. Setting my matters aside, Princess Yongning, what's a lass like you doing by still coming around here? Aren't you supposed to be grounded? He knew the emperor had grounded the princess to her room before the court debacle. So what was she doing back here after only a few days? Those palace guards are too lazy. Pa. Yongning slapped the table. Impertinent. How dare you address the princess in such an uncouth way like lass? Do you find your head too heavy to bear? Zhuofan only gave her a roll of the eyes. Yongning was enraged, while also even more intrigued. Where does a mere steward get this kind of gall from? Luo Yunchang shook her head, trying to mediate. Sister Yongning, calm down. That's how Zhuofan is. No one can change him. If you don't like him, you can just avoid him. How can I? Why else do I hear? Yongning blurted. She blushed at her slip, making up an excuse on the spot. I mean, my patience knows no bounds. How can I stoop to his level? Luo Yunchang saw through her in an instant. Humph, you think I don't know your thoughts? You even have that look in your eyes. Why is it that the hate and anger in your gaze looks dangerously close to flirting? Not that Zhuofan cared. Staring the princess down, Princess Yongning, am I to assume that you've sneaked out again? No way. I walked out the front gate. Sticking out her fairly downsized chest, Yongning said, also, the Imperial Father is holding his centennial jubilee. I have earned my Imperial Father's accord to search for a proper gift. I fear that it is all too sudden for you, so I will help you prepare as well. See how much I care for you. Chapter 386, Vile Dragon's Omen. Chapter 386, Vile Dragon's Omen. Zhuofan couldn't care less, nodding by instinct alone as he made his way away from her. The blank look of indifference dimmed the princess's enthusiasm as well, her tone becoming sour and biting. Yunchang, is this how you teach your servant? He's like a popinjay. Ha ha, forgive me, sister. He doesn't know any better. You can just ignore him. Luo Yunchang consoled her, while dancing inside. This princess has set herself up for disappointment. Zhuofan has never bothered with her. She already had enough rivals, and could surely do without any extras. Luo Yunhai glanced at the girls and said coolly, if Brother Zhua was like you family stewards, would you be flirting with him and chasing him all day long? Hey, who's chasing whom here? Who's flirting? The two girls snapped at the same time. Luo Yunhai just shook his head. I am doing the chasing and flirting, all right? Brother Zhua must have come for me, so I'll be going now. Luo Yunhai chuckled away, leaving two tomatoes behind. Sunk in awkward silence at one point, they glanced at the door with admiration for Luo Yunhai. He could go to Zhuofan whenever, while they had to find an excuse to maintain their prim and proper reputation. In the gardens of the compound, Luo Yunhai briskly came to an already waiting Zhuofan. Zhuofan grinned at the kid. Good. Your sight is improving. You knew I came for you. Of course. Besides, I've been around Brother Zhua for so long that we are like brothers. He. Luo Yunhai scratched his nose. Zhuofan nodded, hooking his finger. Come then, let me see your progress. A fire was lit under Luo Yunhai's rear as he spurred on with purpose and threw a punch at Zhuofan. Bang. Punches flew everywhere, with power and speed. While Zhuofan returned some, he also preached a fight is not just about power, but brains as well. Look for an opening. If there's an opening, seize it. If not, make one. Avail yourself to their weaknesses. Avoid their strengths and lure them into a false sense of security before you spring your trap to crush them. Zhuofan had taught Luo Yunhai well into the night when the moon was up and the stars were shining for Zhuofan. It was all a light warm-up. While Luo Yunhai, a bone-tempering cultivator, facing such a monster, was now sprawled on the ground gasping for air, he was burnt out. Like a toad croaking its last brother. Zhua, you were quite free today to teach me for so long. Luo Yunhai shouted. Soaked in sweat, Zhuofan sighed at the starry sky. 3 years. Only one has passed and the stalemate is already stirring. You'll be hard-pressed to find a quieter time like this afterwards. Ha ha ha. Zhuofan shook his head, patting Luo Yunhai's head before going to his room. The thought of leaving again soon left him bleak. Luo Yunhai gazed at the prideful back. He sensed something and picked himself up to go find Luo Yunchang. Creak. Zhuofan entered his room and sighed. He frowned, having smelled something off about his chambers. Scanning the room, he arrived at the bed, with something squirming beneath the covers. Who's there? Zhuofan said. The squirming thing got squirmier. Zhuofan flicked the bedding off, but the squirmy thing left him speechless. The fair skin of a tight body, covered in thin red silk that could fly away at a simple breeze, was right there for the taking. The owner of such a work of art had her eyes closed shut and teeth clenched while she was shivering and in silent tears. Miss Schwanger? Blinking, Zhuofan swallowed dryly. What are you doing in my bed? Looking like this, no less. His voice trailed off, his shifty eyes gawking in all her splendor. Yun Shuang blushed harder and shouted, Isn't this what a beast like you wanted? I only hope you will keep your promise once you have had your way with my body. A Schwanger, I think you may have slightly taken this the wrong way. When have I asked this of you? Zhuofan's brain turned to mush. Not that his sly eyes ever stopped soaking up the view. Yun Shuang was mortified. Is this how he acts? He got what he wanted and now plays the gentleman? Like she was to blame for coming into his bed, and he was honest to God. Yun Shuang snapped. Zhuofan, are you mocking me? You clearly said to be with you, and now you deny it. What am I to understand? Zhuofan finally figured it out and waved his hands around. A total misunderstanding. I never meant it in this way. I only wanted you to be on my side, to look into fate, to be my advisor, and not to preach me about growing a conscience or becoming goody-goody. That's all. But for you to jump to the conclusion that I wanted you to make such sacrifices, what was I saying again? Where was I? Zhuofan scratched his head. Yun Shuang snapped her eyes open, buried her head deeper from shame, and cried. Her mind took a shortcut to the facts, leaving her to do such an embarrassing act. Zhuofan panicked. The cool him was now lost as to what to do with a crying lady. So he took his clothes and covered the lithe figure. A sudden bang on his door forced it open, and a crowd stormed in with Luo Yunhai in front, laughing. Brother Zhua, me and sister talked to Captain Pang and heard today is your birthday. Come, let's go to your party. Luo Yunhai's eyes landed on the bed. He gave an awkward chuckle and scratched his head. I see you had your own bit of fun already. Then we won't bother you. Carry on. What won't bother? Zhuofan, explain yourself. Luo Yunchang turned from happiness to anger at the drop of the hat after gazing on the bed, pointing at the squirmy thing under Zhuofan's clothes. Who's she? Where did she come from? Glimpsing at the fine, white skin of the exposed legs, Luo Yunchang was incensed. This dense guy at least has good taste. The girl under there must be a doll. Zhuofan shrugged, having no explanation pop into his head. Can you guys step outside for now? Hi. How can we? This is a high-quality class act. Catching Steward Zhua in the act. We just gotta make it memorable. Sly Demon always looked for trouble, then the violent demon cuffed him. A load of tripe. Steward Zhua is the perfect stud muffin. Single 2. He is a perfect catch any woman would swoon over. The other pygmies bobbed their heads sagely. Zhuofan's face sank, glaring at the four. The *TS are only making it worse. The one who was the real troublemaker here was in fact the princess. Others, for better or worse, were aware of saving his skin, merely wagging their tongues while Her Highness took 2 steps forward and yanked the shirt off. Let's see who you are and if you're worthy of our Grand Steward Zhua. Yun Shuang curled up with a cry, this act filling her with shame for being seen like this. Zhuofan's right eye flashed golden divine eye of the void's first stage. Shift. Yun Shuang and Zhuo Fan were gone the next second. Leaving the audience puzzled and sighing, they ran away. We gotta admit, Zhuo Fan's trick sure is useful in cases like these. Luo Yunhai couldn't stop laughing inside. He had everyone gather around to ease Zhuo Fan's loneliness. Otherwise, this classic act would never have happened. One thing was certain, though. They never figured out who was beneath those clothes in a pitch-black forest. Zhuo Fan stood in a clearing watching the expansive night sky. A rustle came, and a clothed Yun Shuang came out of the tree line. Her face was still red hot in fact. Whenever she glanced at him, Zhuo Fan only looked at the night sky, giving her the cold shoulder. Like I said, I want your unconditional support. We are a team. You are one of my people. Your grandfather's business is my business. Or the Yun clan's retreat to Wingay City would have been harder. I admire your grandfather's virtue. Now forget about the matters in the capital. They no longer concern you. Zhuo Fan's cold tone came. Yun Shuang watched his lofty figure, stalwart and imposing, and calmed down. She looked at the sky and said, "Vile dragon is coming." Vile dragon? Zhuo Fan pondered. I recall Yun Shuangji telling me about this. They're the Quanrong. Are the Quanrong invading? Zhuo Fan laughed inside and nodded. Great. You are now on my side. Yun Shuang smiled and nodded. Chapter 387, Quanrong's Delegation. Chapter 387, Quanrong's Delegation. At the crack of dawn in the imperial palace, the emperor sat dignified in his dragon throne. His servants at the side and the officials down below were split on two sides, giving a shallow bow. Prime Minister Zhuge Changfeng was head of policies, while Marshal Dugu Zhantian was in charge of the military. They all showed utmost respect. May your majesty lead a long and prosperous life. Present your petitions, a servant shouted. Glancing at the men below, Dugu Zhantian flicked his sleeve and came forth with a bow. Your majesty, I have worked hard in tracking down High Priest's murderer for 10 days, yet have found nothing. I ask that your majesty give me more men to conduct a more thorough search on the houses. Granted. The emperor spoke. Dugu Zhantian bowed and withdrew. Zhuge Changfeng snickered inside. The old marshal is quite serious in his search, dedicated to the monarch and nation. A shame he's too honest, unable to grasp the cloak and daggers in the court, and insists on carrying this matter on. Be as thorough as you like. Looking in the wrong direction will still give you nothing. Zhuge Changfeng stepped forward. Your majesty, I have a request. The imperial capital has been sealed for 10 days, driving fear into the people and the clans. For the sake of peace, I ask that your majesty opens the gates. Humph, High Priest's case is yet to be solved, and you want to open the city? Is the Prime Minister so impatient because of his own matters, perhaps? Dugu Zhantian snorted and glared. The emperor flicked his cold eyes on the Prime Minister, waiting for him to continue. Zhuge Changfeng shook his head. High Priest's case is crucial, but so is the reputation of the empire. Your majesty, you may disregard people's livelihood, but you should care about the rumors traveling outside the state. Zhuge Changfeng turned serious and bowed, presenting his petition. Your majesty, the Quanrong kingdom knows of your majesty's centennial jubilee, and its emperor has dispatched a delegation with a gift. Please grant it entry, your majesty. What? The emperor and Dugu Zhantian screamed at the same time. Quanrong has sent a delegation? Zhuge Changfeng nodded. This is an external affair. Letting the delegation see the imperial capital under lockdown will earn their ridicule. The emperor's brow shook. He glared at the slightly mocking look of Zhuge Changfeng, and hatred festered in his heart. Zhuge Changfeng has a response for everything. I didn't respond when he asked that I release the seal on the capital in the name of the people. So he used Quanrong's delegation as an excuse. Won't agreeing now look like trying to salvage my name instead of looking out for the people? His vaulting ambition is more than clear. Though the emperor was unable to grasp Zhuge Changfeng's planning from his vague replies, Zhuge Changfeng presented the petition while the emperor paused in thought. Dugu Zhantian intervened. Your majesty, Quanrong and Tianyu have only ever expressed hostility, with numerous clashes each year. The delegation is sure to be part of some elaborate scheme. And with the imperial capital in troubled waters, it is all the more reason we should block any outside interference. I beg your majesty to refuse them, lest we bring wolves in our midst. Old Marshal is mistaken. Because our two nations have been at odds in the past, we should use this chance to mend our relations and live in harmony. Zhuge Changfeng shook his head and reported with a sneer, in addition, they come bearing gifts. Slamming the door in their face will put Tianyu to shame. The Quanrong will think of us as petty. It concerns His Majesty's prestige and Tianyu's name. How could you be so jumpy to lose all decorum when it counts? One official in red stepped forward with a bow. Prime Minister's words ring true. I second him. The man left nothing to chance. Dugujantian was overwhelmed. Those loyal officials that followed the emperor around, all but him, were in Zhuge Changfeng's pocket. Be it civil or military, all the emperor was left with were a scarce few. Zhuge Changfeng held his head high. Your Majesty, this is a matter of great importance for the nation. We, loyal subjects to the flag, ask your Majesty to make a swift decision that I may reply to the Quanrong Emperor at once. Humph, Prime Minister, why the rush? You have so much care for the Quanrong. The last time I checked, you are our nation's Prime Minister. The Emperor said, looking at Zhuge Changfeng in mock and ridicule. All officials panicked. Sweating all over. The Emperor's accusation was heavy, treasonous even. He started off as a joke, but singled out Zhuge Changfeng, the Prime Minister, as the nation's traitor. Not even the Emperor could accuse someone without evidence, especially the Prime Minister. It only went to show how enraged the Emperor was. Getting ahead of himself, Zhuge Changfeng took it in stride, even chuckled, Your Majesty, please don't joke. I am under Tianyu's payroll, working in its best interests. Try to understand, Your Majesty, everything I do is for the Empire. Ha ha ha, of course I understand the Prime Minister's toil. The Emperor forced out through gritted teeth and slammed a servant with the petition, shouting, As per Prime Minister's petition, I shall allow the Quanrong's delegation into Tianyu. The lockdown on the imperial capital is lifted, and the High Priest's case will be postponed until after my celebration. Your Majesty is wise. The officials bowed, to which the Emperor snorted, watching with clenched fists. Dugujantian cursed them inside for being treasonous dogs. Meanwhile, in the High Priest's observatory, a 10-meter large golden compass placed at the top released a deep blue glow. A strange energy lingered over it, forcing it to move. Zhuofan and Yun Shuang witnessed this phenomenon in shock. Is this the Yun clan's heirloom? The 8th-grade spiritual weapon, heaven-linking apparatus? Zhuofan was amazed. Yun Shuang nodded. By having the heaven-linking apparatus commune with the world, one can see what happens in the world. As I watched the stars last night, I saw the vile dragon converge his attention here. But that is only a rough estimate. Only through the heaven-linking apparatus can I see its precise focus and how it tangles with the other faction's fates. So that's how it is. Zhuofan nodded and looked at her in earnest. You do what you do best, and I'll be the lookout. Yun Shuang giggled, rolling her eyes. This is the home of Yun clan. Having a lookout is like saying we came here to steal from ourselves. You do have a point. Nevertheless, with every house having eyes and ears everywhere, I'll block them. Zhuofan scratched his head awkwardly, guarding the door looking at him. Yun Shuang recalled last night and blushed. He isn't all that bad. At least not to his people, or they wouldn't hold a birthday party for him. This recall also brought her unmistakably to the moment when she threw himself in his bed, like a birthday present. And there she went again, blushing harder, shaking her head to get rid of those thoughts. Yun Shuang focused. Her eyes turned black and she stared at the heaven-linking apparatus. The stars above transformed into 4 dragons, roaming above Tianyu and tearing at each other. The clearer it became, the greater the alarm on Yun Shuang's face when she had last looked at the stars with her grandfather. The clash of the dragons resulted in Tianyu being left in a sorry state. As for the final winner, it was unclear. But the aftermath of this war would leave Tianyu filled with corpses, and the people a wreck for decades to come. The greatest casualties Tianyu had ever seen in history. The heaven-communing apparatus stopped and the stars resumed their rightful place. Zhuofan ran over. Interested. It's over? He was stunned to see Yun Shuang crying and mournful. Shuanger, what's wrong? Did the wind get in your eye? Zhuofan blinked. Yun Shuang grabbed his wrist and pleaded, Steward Zhua, I beg of you. You can ignore what happened to grandfather, but please, you must stop the bloodshed from happening. Only you can alter Tianyu's fate and free the people from suffering. Yun Shuang tightened her grip. Zhuofan met her gaze and nodded. I will do my best, but what? Yun Shuang was overjoyed that he had agreed. Zhuofan was still very much serious. I keep my private matters separate from business. Personal matters always come first. You are with me now, and I will help you in your troubles. But everything else will be done in passing. Yun Shuang was clueless. Zhuofan grinned. That's just my style. You'll know soon enough. Now, what did you see? Yun Shuang snapped out of it and said, Vile Dragon's focus is on the Luo clan. Zhuofan raised an eyebrow. Luo clan had just received its newfound position and had not one darn relation with Quanrong. Why is it after the Luo clan? Chapter 388. Ma Man. Chapter 388. Ma Man. Yun Shuang guessed what was going on in that head of his inside. That is what fate tells me. Vile Dragon will come down hard, but it also has an augmenting effect. The other three factions' fortune will be augmented, while only the Luo clan weakens. Quanrong's coming to Tianyu bodes ill for the Luo clan. How can only the other three get enhanced? Zhuofan paced around with a frown, but came out empty. This shouldn't be the case. I can understand if the two of them grow, but Crouching Dragon, the Vile Dragon, comes with the Crouching Dragon in mind. So why would it result in the Luo clan suffering? Don't you find it odd? Yun Shuang nodded. An educated guess tells us that Quanrong's first target is Tianyu's imperial family, the Crouching Dragon. But the heavens have shown the contrary. I can't make sense of it either. Yun Shuang sighed. Her sight dazed while Zhuofan started shining. Yun Shuangji said that fate is fraught with death and life's paths, while different men make different choices, treading different walks. The three houses must have done something to make the Vile Dragon target Luo clan. What else could make the mighty Quanrong Empire focus on the little old us? Zhuofan mulled it over before asking, what about the Luo clan's fortune? I don't know. Yun Shuang shrugged. Luo clan has you at the helm. With you being out of heaven's control, I can only see the present and immediate situation, while the future is blocked. Zhuofan sighed like the old saying goes, know yourself and the enemy, and you'd ever be victorious. Zhuofan knew of his enemies getting tougher, while being in the dark about his own clan, making his own future actions uncertain. Being outside fate is not all it's cracked up to be. A deep breath and a permanent frown, that was Zhuofan. What took priority was finding out the three houses' activities. With such a particularly large event in play, a master plan had to be brewing in a deep dark corner. Not cracking it yesterday would get him shafted. Zhuofan's mood sank with every thought. Yet he spared Yun Shuang a smile. Let's go back. Such a fortune to have you around at this time, and to find out about all this before it had been too late. It's fine. I'm doing it for my grandfather and the people. Yun Shuang smiled back and the two left for the Luo clan, but 1,000 meters out, on a pavilion, two shadows kept their sights on them until they were gone. Our shadow recon team has never been so useless before. One snorted. We're so far away that we can't see nor hear H*T. What's the point? It's not like we explicitly asked to tail Zhuofan, now is it? That freak has a freaky eye that has put even the captain on a sickbed. Any closer and he'd see us. Not even a miracle would save us then. The other side. Come on, let's check what they were after and perish. Maybe we'll find something. Humph. Now the great shadow guards have turned into garbage men. The shadow grumbled but still followed the other, drifting over to perish as black smoke. While Zhuofan's mind was on the shifting situation, he was out bumping into his allies, asking around for the house's movements. He had Yun Shuang peek the sky over at the parish for any other changes now and then as well. The shadows tailing them, though, never once got anything useful. Zhuofan was finding it more and more odd that every time he went to Drifting Flowers edifices, the people stammered each time he mentioned Chu Qingcheng, thinking they may not necessarily be so forthcoming with the complete and whole truth. As for the Yun clan's migration, the emperor posed the question as a mere courtesy, getting the response from Zhuofan that they were in a safe place and out of the water well. Zhuofan had all the reasons. He and Yun Shuangji became fast friends, so he wasn't pushing it to help the guy's family after his death, no? And he was still emperor-certified best steward beneath heavens. His every action was in accordance with the Emperor's. It wouldn't have gone so smoothly with the Yun clan, otherwise the Emperor had to swallow hard to accept the damage he had done to himself. I just had to hail Zhuofan so high and leave a weakness exposed. And now he had Quanrong's delegation coming over with a present. Truly, when it rained it poured. This was exactly the forecast that had Zhuofan's heart tense up. Are Quanrong going to play out like the forecast? Are they the fourth power to push down on the Luo clan? Zhuofan took out Ascending Jade, giving instructions to the elders. They needed overwhelming power and fast. 3 months came and went. The imperial capital was abuzz from the 1,000 detachments of soldiers at its gates in shining armor and impeccable discipline. Not to mention their mounts were not as insipid as warhorses, but were spiritual beasts. The Grand Cavalry was riding on 3rd-level spiritual beasts. Led by a few 5th-level spiritual beasts, the Quanrong's delegation had arrived. Zhuofan, come take a look at all the commotion. At the crack of dawn, a young scholar was very excitedly running towards the Luo clan. Zhuofan and Luo Yunchang came out silently. He was no other than the cross-dressing Yongning snooping out of the palace as usual. With how the princess had gotten so close to the Luo clan, she dropped by every other day. First, it was seeing her dear foster sister as the official excuse, and then she shrugged all pretenses, brazenly going after Zhuofan. Even Zhuofan had to be tolerant to the princess and suffer her antics. Princess, what are you up to this time? I don't have the time, so go ahead with Yunhai and young miss. Zhuofan shrugged, scratching her cute button nose. Yongning snorted and stuck her head out. This is a once-in-a-100-years occasion. It's so kind of me to invite you to see the bustle, so the least you could do is thank me. See the bustle? More like you wanting to jump right in. Zhuofan mocked, spinning on his heel back. Inside, Yongning flustered. Quanrong's delegation has come. They're about to enter the city. It's a chance to see exotic cultures that you should never miss. What? Quanrong? Zhuofan stopped in his tracks and turned right back out and kept on going. He wanted to check them out. How strong they were. How many had come? To assess the threat to his house. Princess cried, "Wait for me." Luo Yunchang was stunned, sensing the seriousness of the matter. She called Yunhai, and they went together as well, and so, the whole gang stepped out of the compound's gate. They had just taken a turn on Main Street when they bumped into a literal mob. You couldn't swing a dead cat without hitting something. They tried to find something besides heads, but nope. There were heads everywhere. The exotic foreigners were so in vogue right now. The whole capital was out to see them. Brother Zhua here? A shout turned Zhuofan's head, coming from a building's 2nd floor. Long Xingyun waved for him to come sit with his allies. Zhuofan nodded and took everyone over. Every one of his peers was there, not just his allies, even the likes of Hell Valley and Pilking Hall. But on account of all the bustle, they decided to keep the friction to a minimum, so much so that the arrival of Zhuofan made them look anywhere but at him, with Zhuofan being a moody beast who knew what excuse he'd come up with to trash them. If the elders chose to stand clear, it went double for these disciples. Long Xingyun's group chuckled. This brother sure is feisty. A pain for the enemy and a shoulder to rely on for the allies. Brother Zhua, the entire 2nd floor is reserved for the house's disciples to get a clearer view of the Quanrong's delegation. Long Xingyun invited them to sit. Xie Tianshang was stern, his hand never leaving the hilt of his sword. I wonder how many experts they have. Like you can expect anything else from a martial fanatic. Zhuofan and Long Xingyun's eyes met, and they chuckled. After the esoteric debate, Xie Tianshang's mood had never changed. Quanrong's delegation had yet to parade into town, so Zhuofan looked around. He picked up on a sneaky figure and shouted, "Yin Fu, you've come to see the excitement and won't even greet me." Yin Fu ducked out of sight on the 1st floor when he froze. With a forced smile and a scratch on his head, "Steward Zhua, what a coincidence." His words got cut off by a prideful voice. "Yin Fu, my master and martial aunt are almost here, and you didn't get us seats, eh?" Xiao Dandan came with Peony and Iris overseers when she noticed Zhuofan's unnatural gaze and blushed, ducking her head. Brother Zhua, they had long since been an item. But you were so cooped up that you never noticed. Long Xingyun gossiped with a snicker. Zhuofan raised an eyebrow. You guys? Yin Fu was scared out of his mind, even losing his voice. Everyone knew Xiao Dandan was more than a little crazy for Zhuofan. He ignored her every step. True, But that didn't mean anyone could just show up and take what his steward's was. It was a no-brainer what would happen now. Peony Overseer saw the two shaking in their boots and snapped. What, Zhuofan? You didn't want Dandan and now you're going to ruin her life? That's just evil of you. Zhuofan flicked his hand, his eyes roaming over the happy and shivering couple. Then he cracked up, slapping Yin Fu's back. Ha ha, my man. He was simply overjoyed at having thrown away one pesky baggage. Everyone's faces twitched and turned dark. Chapter 389, Rampant. Chapter 389, Rampant. Ugh. Yin Fu was having mixed feelings about this. He should be happy as a clam that Zhuofan wasn't here to deck him. But the more he thought about it, the less Zhuofan's word fit. As if I'm picking his trash, his damaged goods. Xiao Dandan had a sour taste in her mouth as well, her burning heart crumbling from disappointment. What did Zhuofan mean by this? Did Xiao Dandan mean absolutely nothing to him given any time of the day? He didn't take her seriously, labeling her as an extra baggage from the get-go. Her disciple standing there all lonely had Peony Overseer's temper explode to protect her, cursing, Zhuofan. What's that supposed to mean? You felt nothing for Dandan all this time? Are you dead inside? The outburst earned silent looks from everyone, then sighs. It's truly a mystery how a woman's mind operates. Iris Overseer pulled on Peony Overseer's clothes awkwardly while scolding her through transmission. When one man has eyes for Dandan, you curse. When another man ignores Dandan, you curse again. Just what do you want exactly? To have a death match for the lady's hand? That's... Words left Peony Overseer. Could Yin Fu versus Zhuofan even be called a death match? Who in this world can even beat that brat? She only found that Zhuofan's cold reply had cut her disciple too quickly. Her disciple had always carried a blazing torch for him for 7 years, and counting. If not for the matter with Qingcheng, maybe. This is fine as well. Sighing, Peony Overseer consoled Xiao Dandan, then signaled for Yin Fu to come with her to teach him proper manners. Yin Fu waited for Steward's instructions, but the guy only flicked him away. Go, your future mother-in-law is calling you. Better listen to her. You, zip it. Peony Overseer snapped with a glare on him. Zhuofan struck the perfect bystander figure looking at the street. His heart, however, was doing somersaults. Xiao Dandan was a love-struck fool, always behind him like a lost puppy. Now that someone had taken that puppy in, he was over the moon. Yongning asked Luo Yunchang about the ins and outs of this drama, and sighed. But her gaze for Zhuofan was now a heavier one. Getting this sugar husband won't be easy. Roar. The rumbling sound announced the opening of the city gates to reveal fanged savage beasts strutting onward in orderly fashion. The people cheered. Most of them had never even seen spiritual beasts. Least of all these 5th-level ones. The noisy second floor fell silent, with everyone focusing on the procession. 5 men and 1 woman were leading. On those 5th-level spiritual beasts, the crowd fell back at the imposing aura, avoiding their eyes. The ones behind had no problem seeing those foreigners perfectly, especially the girl, of stunning beauty. She had a certain wild vibe the Tianyu women lacked, leaving the men enraptured and drooling. Gulping. Long Xingyun squinted. A fair and virtuous lady, a great catch. Perv. The women around rolled their eyes at him. Quanrong are famous for their beast-rearing skills. But it's my first time seeing the combined power of a man and beast. Xie Tianshang's sword was out of its sheath, flashing dangerously. His 2 eyes filled with thirst for battle, wishing nothing more than to jump down there and take the foreigners for a spin. Everyone shook their heads. Martial fanatic. Long Xingyun advised, this is a chance for our nations to shake hands. You can't go start a war, especially with that woman. Their talk went in one ear and out the other. In Zhuofan's case, all his attention was focused on the riders. They had 3 profound heaven cultivators, 3 radiant stage cultivators, and 1,000 veteran cavalry in the bone-tempering stage. They rode on 1,000 3rd-level spiritual beasts and 6 5th-level spiritual beasts. Can this army threaten the Luo clan? Zhuofan sighed. Zhuofan, what are you looking at? The princess was piqued by his heavy gaze. At oddities. Zhuofan's eyes twitched. The princess was puzzled. What oddities? If I am looking, that means I clearly can't find them. Now can I? I wouldn't be looking otherwise, you daft girl. Zhuo Fan rolled his eyes. The princess flushed red and glared in a pout roar. The sky shook under the noise, and the Quanrong delegation stopped. Zhuo Fan's side watched one leader's mount roaring and getting ready for attack. In front of it was a 5-year-old child. Crying on the ground, a grizzled and thin old man charged out of the crowd and hugged the child. "Forgive me. The child is too young to understand running in front of you. I'll take him away." "It's fine, uncle," the woman smiled, but the jacked-up leader snickered over her. "Are all Tianyu's people without decorum? I am Quanrong Empire's general, and for you, an ant, to bump into me is a gross act of disrespect. Can you bear the responsibility of a war between us?" "Cut the act. How could we start a war over this? We'd have been at war for ages by now otherwise." Zhuo Fan mocked. The princess bobbed her head, so did the other young masters, looking at the buffed tough guy with contempt. Those words of his only worked on the common people, while the houses were too wise to fall for some cheap provocation. The old man was but a common man, however, paralyzed on the ground in fear of what he'd done. He had just condemned his fellow countrymen to a life of pain and suffering. He dropped to his knees and begged, "Spare us, Lord. I am at fault. Please don't aggravate the matter." The tough guy snickered, filled with contempt, but the woman frowned and glared. "Jalahan, stop making a scene." Hee, young miss, I was only messing with Tianyu's pests. It won't change anything." The tough guy waved his hand, turning to the old man. "I can overlook this for Tianyu, out of the kindness of my heart. But my mount here has special tastes, you see. Every time it bumps into someone, it feels the urge to swallow something. Or his bad mood might affect my own. So tell me, how will you settle this?" The old man paled, figuring the general wanted to feed his spiritual beast with the child, and he wanted the old man to do it too. But how could he? The woman snapped, "Jalan, having fun is one thing, but don't cross the line. Hee, young miss, it's just a game. No harm, no foul." The tough guy chuckled, yet his vicious eyes never left the old man, waiting to see him give the child to the spiritual beast. The spiritual beast bared its fangs and licked its maw with bloodshot eyes. "Humph, absurd. They've come to our land and yet act all high and mighty." Xie Tianshang slapped the table, his sword half drawn. Long Xingyun advised, "Brother Xie, they were invited. We can't interfere, not with the officials having yet to appear. It will only invite trouble." "Ha! The great noble houses, afraid of stirring trouble?" The princess snapped. "I never saw you stop once from looking for trouble yet. Now you've decided to sit back? Chickens. Zhuo Fan, follow me as we teach them a lesson." "Knock yourself out. I don't feel like it." Zhuo Fan flicked his hand. "Like you said, the 7 houses have made looking for trouble practically a tradition, so you can handle it." "Oh, Xiao Dandan, weren't you once high-strung as well?" Xiao Dandan blushed with a lowered head. "I was more confused than angry then. Why bring it up? Yin Fu, you're no better either." Zhuo Fan glanced at him. Yin Fu nodded with calm. "True, every time I went out with my master, I'd be throwing my weight around. But since I've joined the Luo clan, with its tight rules, I never get the chance." "Well said. You'll show off again one day. Not to worry." Zhuo Fan snapped his fingers and snickered. "See that, princess? We may look calm and kind on the surface, but there's a festering evil in our bones, like those guys below. Aren't you expecting too much, sending us mean guys into another mean guy's business?" The princess blushed in anger. "Then I'll go." Meanwhile, the old man was hugging the sobbing child tighter, under cold, hard pressure and indecision. It was then that a scoff came. "Quanrong are guests and nothing more. Since when have they started acting as hosts?" Whoosh! Yun Shuang stood before the elder and the child. Zhuo Fan sighed. He didn't give a hoot about others, while being unable to ignore his own people, his eyes glinting. Zhuo Fan's mouth curled up in his trademark evil smile. Time to probe the Quanrong for a bit. Chapter 390. A Dragon Can't Repress a Snake. Chapter 390. A Dragon Can't Repress a Snake. "Schwanger!" Yongning cried. The others looked on as well, stunned to see the Empire's holy maiden coming out in the people's defense. Then they turned eager. After the high priest's death, the holy maiden had become the apple of the Empire's eye. They'd go as far as charging into the Quanrong delegation if it meant defending her, something the Quanrong were not privy to. Evident by Jalahan's mockery, "Missy, are you out for a quick death? Hasn't your emperor taught you how to receive guests? You'll now but into another's problems, even Quanrong's delegation? If you call yourselves guests, just act like one. I've never seen a guest as outrageous as you." Yuan Shuang stood tall and bold. Jalahan glared, then cackled. "What a charmer you are. As for falling in with the customs here, it will depend on the host. I'm going to take those two for my mount as a snack. What's the host going to do about it?" Jalahan shouted, and the beast roared in its pounce on the old man and child. "No." Yuan Shuang shot a palm at the beast's skull. Jalahan merely snickered and released his aura bang. Yuan Shuang rebounded as if hitting a wall. "Ha ha ha. A profound heaven girl dares to interfere? I wonder what gave you the gall?" Jalahan cackled. Yuan Shuang's heart was beating frantically. Watching the old man and child becoming the spiritual beast's dinner about to be engulfed by those fangs, she teared up. "Have mercy on my people, for they are suffering so." The old man and child closed their eyes, knowing their end was inescapable, waiting for the jaws of death to close on them. The Quanrong woman shouted, "Jalahan, stop this instant." Too little, too late. Jalahan turned a deaf ear to her orders. Having gone drunk on power, the people sighed with a shake of their heads. This was the fate that awaited any common man stumble upon the Quanrong delegation. With it being a matter concerning the future relations between the two nations, how many people would dare to step in to solve this mess? Holy Maiden was one, albeit weak. Under everyone's gazes, the fangs inched closer and closer on their meal. The aura had the old man and child unable to even breathe. With a groan, the savage aura withdrew, and the spiritual beast halted mid-charge with its maw open. Only the stench kept coming. Jalahan was shocked, and the audience was shocked. Regaining their hope, who was it? The old man and child were still waiting for death, but the beast was running late, making them crack open their eyes to watch the stunning spectacle. The savage beast's huge body was stopped by a red hand. What stood before them was a youth with white hair. They knew who he was. Everyone did. After the fiasco outside the imperial palace, the savage no one in Tianyu messed with, Zhuofan, had arrived. How is that possible? The calm Quanrong now cried out. Jalahan's eyes flashed with a thirst for battle. Tianyu has someone capable of holding back a 5th-level spiritual beast with one hand. The agitated lads on the second floor rested easy now, sitting back to enjoy the show with one leg over the other. Once Zhuofan stepped up, everything became a foregone conclusion, and all thanks to Zhuofan's harsh, cruel, and heavy-handed lesson. Xie Tianshang was grumbling. What a hypocrite. He says he washes his hands of this matter, yet here he is jumping right in. Ha ha ha, isn't it great though? He's the only one who dares to butt in such an affair. Brother Xie, don't mind it. Long Xingyun laughed. The others bobbed their heads in total agreement. It begged the question though. Would the dragon come out on top, or the snake? Zhuofan paid no attention to the savage glints. He merely glanced at the old man and child. What are you looking at? Do you still want to get eaten? The old man darted away with the kid in his arms, expressing his gratitude. Thank you, Steward Zhua. I will never forget this. What arrogance! Jalahan barked, holding the beast by the mane, causing it to roar as well. It thrashed around trying to escape from Zhuofan's grip. Zhuofan was using the Qilin arm, proving its efforts were in vain. Zhuofan snorted and flicked. To the audience's shock, the 5th-level spiritual beast slammed into the ground like a ton of bricks. Knocked out cold, Jalahan took to the air, outraged. A mere flick knocked a 5th-level spiritual beast unconscious? Who is this guy? I've never heard of anyone like that in Tianyu. The Quanrong delegation was just as stunned. Steward was might as boundless. It started with a shout, and then it turned into a roar as more voices joined in, throwing their fists in the air. Steward Zhua, Steward Zhua. The shouts came in waves, rumbling across the sky. The Quanrong delegation looked around in shock and then focused at Zhuofan. A steward has such power? How come we've never heard of such an outrageous being in Tianyu? His fame is great as well. The people practically love him. Blast it! What is the intelligence department even doing? An expert like this that every common man knows about, yet we've gotten no wind of? They're all nothing but 2-bit rejects. Ignoring it all, Zhuofan strode over to Yun Shuang. She had put on a wide smile, being relieved for the people's safety. At some point, her heart knew that as long as Zhuofan was around, everything will be a-okay. Zhuofan was the one who gave her such a sense of security. Steward Zhua. Yongning squeezed in with Yin Fu through the crowd, running at them. She bowed. Forgive me, Steward Zhua, for our tardiness in buying the goods you asked for. Please don't blame us. We are mere servants, nothing in your eyes, but we are hard-working. Someone blocked our path. Zhuofan noticed her wink and laughed. This girl hasn't been around me for long, yet she has developed quite the flair for the dramatic. The Quanrong delegation was overwhelmed. Say what? That lady just now and the new kid are only errand boys? Everyone from Quanrong felt a chill. Mommy. Which house is bursting at the seams to have a profound heaven expert doing errands? Weren't profound heaven experts supposed to be clan elders in Tianyu? Gulping, the Quanrong looked at them in fear. If a servant's requirements are at least the profound heaven stage, then what about their elders, clan head, and even venerables? More importantly, how many clans like these are there in Tianyu? They all knew Tianyu was a hidden den of monsters, but this was ridiculous. How is that hidden? Even the common man knows their outstanding blue blood. Goddamn you, Hu Lianchai. How the hell did you perform your investigation? The Quanrong glared at the last rider on the 5th level spiritual beasts. A thin, middle-aged man, the guy was bewildered as well, lowering his head in shame. When did Tianyu whip out a fresh batch of clan members? Or are they bluffing? But a glance at Zhuofan had him sighing instead. Losing all nerve, Zhuofan was a 3rd layer of profound heaven expert, but a hand of his trashed a 5th level spiritual beast. Not even Jalahan could do that. For a freak like that to be a steward and the clan to have profound heaven experts as servants may not be such an oddity. The Quanrong looked at Zhuofan's group with solemn gazes. With all their arrogance washed away, the younger generation on the 2nd floor felt their cheeks twitching in tandem. Zhuofan is the worst influence. He is pushing them deeper on the path of violence. Chapter 391, Tuoba Liufeng. Chapter 391, Tuoba Liufeng. You know you're wasting time, so why are you still here? If you run late and the young master isn't satisfied, I for one can't suffer the consequences, and you sure as hell can't either. Flicking his sleeve, Zhuofan strutted forth. He might as well go with the flow and take the play as far as it took him. The Quanrong grew tense. This outrageous thing is afraid of his young master? This clan must have harsh rules, with experts in droves. So much so that the steward who has such godlike power isn't of high status in the clan and has to cater to the young lord's whims? Everyone knew the strong ones in the clan were revered, and even the clan head watched his tone around them, let alone the young master. From the sound of it, he isn't much in the clan. But what does that make his clan? An abomination. Yongning and Yun Shuang shared a sneaky smile, and the people hid their joy. All of Tianyu knew of Zhuofan by now. A steward in name, yet the de facto leader of the Luo clan in the clan head's absence. Only Gooks would actually fall for his antics, and the Quanrong were shaking in their boots with the intel and their numbers. They figured they'd boss Tianyu around, with no house or clan messing with them. Reality proved otherwise, however. They just met a servant who was a profound heaven expert, while their steward was a godlike freak capable of doing anything. Case in point, didn't the steward wipe the floor with their general's mount? It was by this clan's grace that they weren't dead already. The Quanrong slumped, losing their haughty air. A handsome youth even cupped his hands. My subordinate was too impulsive, and I apologize for the trauma he caused. Thugs on the outside, yet pushovers at heart. His attitude earned the contempt of everyone. Be that as it may, having the delegation apologize for its transgressions was enough. No? Tell that to Zhuofan. He never once looked at them, treating them like air. As he turned to Yun Shuang. What are you standing around for? Back to shopping. Ridiculous. Zha Lahan's eyes spat fire. His fists tight. The princess snickered inside, yet not quite content with how subdued the drama was. She wanted it blown sky high and pointed at the Quanrong. Steward Zhua, how are we to do that when they're blocking the road? Zhuofan eyed her for a second, picking up on the glint in her look. Perfect timing. Let's get those guys to act and get a feel of the situation, shall we? Hold on while I deal with this. Turning a cold look to the Quanrong, he walked over. The imperial capital's main street is for walking, not parading your pets. Anything on all four out? What did you say? Zhao Lahan snapped, his muscles tightening like steel. His body primed to explode any minute. The youth next to him turned glum. Zhuo Fan was treading on thin ice. The Quanrong were beast-rearing people. They'd lived all their lives among them. Asking them to throw their beasts out was like demanding them to give up their advantage and pride. The answer was an obvious no. The 8 houses people on the second floor snorted. Most of them had first-hand knowledge of Zhuo Fan's style. He'd even steal candy from a baby. No low was beneath him. He'd wrung them off of all dignity and still act like the sore loser per Zhuo Fan's M.O. He'd first taunt his victims so he'd act in self-defense, leading them to strike first. The result? Of course, beating the crap out of you, all while standing on the moral high ground. Let's see if anyone can top that. How many innocent victims had fallen under Zhuo Fan's malignant thumb, with nowhere to vent their loss, and were forced to suffer in silence? Everyone knew that. Zhuo Fan's infamy was practically built on it. Exceptions being the Quanrong, the new guys, the fresh meat. Falling for it hook, line, and sinker. There wasn't a soul out here who wasn't snickering inside, waiting for the show to start. That's what you get for being obnoxious. Clueless as you are, you should keep your head down anywhere near Zhuo Fan. The Quanrong youth walked up to Zhuo Fan, his heart unsettled. A deep breath helped a bit before he began. We are Quanrong warriors. Our beasts never leave our side. We only know how to advance and never retreat. If you are capable, then you can make the spiritual beasts fall back. The people cried, "Holy moly!" Inside, Zhuo Fan blinked once, then stared back, an evil grin playing at the corner of his mouth. That kid sure is something. Long Xingyun sighed. The rest agreed his words were impeccable. Neither an outright refusal nor taking it lying down, but he had shifted the issue onto Zhuo Fan. To have him deal with it, everyone knew the youth probably had no clue what Zhuo Fan was made of. Thus he chose the middle ground to neither sound threatening nor a coward, thinking that Zhuo Fan was a man of importance. It was a perfect blend of tone and words to defend his self-respect, and thus he had dumped the issue on Zhuo Fan's head. Failing to scare the beasts back would put Zhuo Fan on the spot. 2 birds with 1 stone. He had avoided the taunt and forced the other person to take action. Now it begged the question, who on earth could push back 1,000 spiritual beasts? Not even Quanrong's best beast master could do it. The Quanrong watched the youth with gratitude and gave Zhuo Fan a wide grin. Long Xingyun gasped, inspecting the youth. Who is he? So young yet versed in politics and strength. Luo Yunhai nodded. He is leader material, with an air about him that could have only been gained in battle. Ha ha ha, brother. Your eyes are getting sharper. 4 people stepped on the second floor, the 4 tigers of Tianyu. Looking at the standoff outside, Dugafeng laughed. We've been waiting for the delegation to reach the Imperial Palace's gates, yet they just wouldn't show. Turns out the scamp cut them off. I just can't make sense of him. He's picking a fight with anyone. He isn't called Tianyu's #1 Thorn for nothing. Ha ha ha. Big brother, could you please not talk like that? It wasn't Zhuo Fan who started it this time. Luo Yunchang tried to salvage the situation. Dugafeng smiled. Brother is so jumpy, but I didn't mean it as Steward's was responsibility. We had figured there'll be some hostilities with the Quanrong. That's what happens when we battle each other for years and years. Their delegation is only here to showcase their superiority, something we planned for. Yet here they are, dead in their tracks, and saving us plenty of trouble too. The others understood their march to the Imperial Palace was to set up their powerful position, cut short by Zhuo Fan's interference. Sigh, it's a darn shame too. It was one thing to raise your tone against the 4 tigers of Tianyu, and a whole nother against Zhuo Fan. By the way, brother, do you know that youth? Luo Yunhai asked. Dugafeng sighed. Not just know him, but he is an old rival. He is the Quanrong Empire's commander, Tuoba Tieshan's only son, Tuoba Liufeng. He's a young commander? Luo Yunhai exclaimed. I was wondering why I got a general's vibe from him. Dugafeng nodded, his eyes fixed on the youth. Tuoba Liufeng is shrewd, brave, and adept in leading his men. A bit on the young side, but he has earned his place in the army. We 4 have tangled with him more times than I can count. and always came at a disadvantage. They say he will take his father's place, a prime candidate to be the next commander. Luo Yunhai's eyes trembled and he ingrained the youth's image in his mind. The next Quanrong Empire's commander meant their future enemy, elder brother. What about the others? Luo Yunhai asked. Dugafeng said, there are 8 wolf wardens under Quanrong Empire's commander, of great mettle and are unstoppable. 3 of them are currently present. Dugafeng pointed at the tough guy stirring trouble. He is second among the 8 wolf wardens, Savage Wolf Shalan. His innate power and unmatched bravery paint him as someone able to tear apart a 5th-level spiritual beast. A fierce opponent, that one there is obscure wolf, Hu Lianchai. In charge of intelligence and scouting, a hidden danger. Dugafeng pointed at the thin figure. He isn't much to look at, but he is sure to be watching you. His operatives are sharp and capable. Luo Yunhai nodded. Dugafeng turned to a masked man with only half his face visible. That is Quanrong Empire's most famous archer, ranked 3rd in the 8 wolf wardens, the sky-piercing wolf, Zhe Bi. His heaven-shaking bow and cloud-nailing arrow are 6th-grade spiritual weapons. His shots are deadly, taking out the enemy generals. Even the marshal suffered at his hands. He is one opponent you can hardly guard against. Chapter 392, Thirst for Blood. Chapter 392, Thirst for Blood. You're telling me that Godfather, a 6th layer of Radiant Stage expert. Actually, Luo Yunhai widened his eyes. Dugafeng nodded gravely. Yes, 8 wolf wardens are all tough, all Radiant Stage experts, all veterans. Never underestimate them on the field of battle. Everyone nodded, if not for the 4 tigers of Tianyu saying it, who were engaged in wars all year round. The 8 houses youths would have never known that the Quanrong had sent a mean bunch this time. Luo Yunhai turned to the last 2, his eyes never leaving the oldest person from his sight. Hair white, small yet sharp eyes, casting a veil of mystery over him. Elder brother, who is that? Dugafeng mumbled. Quanrong Empire's imperial tutor, Han Tianma. He is our Prime Minister Zhuge Chongfeng's equivalent. Does that mean the enemy has sent his best over? Everyone was startled. How could they send someone of such importance to Tianyu? Don't they fear an assassination? Dugafeng shook his head, morose. Quanrong Empire is unlike ours, who have the 4 pillars to hold up the nation, yet each of them is filled with their own designs. Take Godfather and Zhuge Chongfeng for example. Neither will accept the other. With years and years of constant fights at the border, they say Zhuge Chongfeng had planned to go to the Quanrong Empire once, for peace talks, but never carried it out. Do you know why? He feared the old marshal's betrayal. The chorus sounded. Dugafeng nodded. Godfather isn't the type to do this, but it'll be impossible for the Prime Minister to believe Godfather completely. While Quanrong Empire's commander Tuoba Taizhan allowed his son to come on this delegation because the imperial tutor is here to look after him. Why Han Tianma has come in the first place is because Tuoba Taizhan has 5 million troops stationed at the border, sending the delegation off. If any danger were to come upon the delegation, the army would march south and the empires would be tangled into a heavy war. This is the general's accord. Everyone felt a shiver run down their spine. The enemy emperor's left and right arm help each other while our 4 pillars are stuck in a conflict. If not for Tianyu's vast lands and many talents cropping up, as well as the 7 noble houses and the empire's 3 guardian sects, we'd have long since fallen. Everyone shook their heads. What about the babe? Long Xingyun licked his lips, enraptured as he was, pointing at the girl. Dugafeng deadpanned. She is Tuoba Tieshan's only daughter and Tuoba Liufeng's younger sister, Taoba Lianer. Hailed as the #1 beauty in Quanrong and owner of impressive beast-rearing skills. But she is yet to show up on the battlefield and is of weak cultivation. There's nothing about her worth mentioning. Oh, Brother Dugu, what kind of man are you? How can you use strength to judge such a fine specimen? Stomping his feet in admiration, Long Xingyun said, she and our women are different, but it's all in the style. I wonder if I can invite her over during her stay in Tianyu. A night in the warm candlelight, a beautiful entanglement, and the war of the nations may very well be a thing of the past. Perv. The women rolled their eyes, the men twitched and sighed. Dugafeng said, Brother Long, it's best that you forget about her. She is the commander's daughter for one, and although no one has seen her skills, she is no pushover. Don't test her and turn this into an even bigger issue. No biggie, some flowers you can pick, some you can only admire. This young master has his self-esteem, ha ha ha. The beauty below simply danced in the infatuated eyes of Long Xingyu and the others, merely shrugged veiled dragon pavilion's young pavilion lord was a casual romantic, unlike the savage Zhuofan. He ought to know when to stop, no? Meanwhile, Zhuofan stared down Tuoba Liufeng in thought. Then he grinned, telling you to step back is out of respect for you. Faraway guests. Do you really want me to do it? Ha ha ha, if you must. Tuoba Liufeng grinned back and the Quanrong were looking at Zhuofan with mockery. The spiritual beasts under them were their lifetime companions, listening to nobody's orders but them as for cowering them. Ha ha, like that's gonna happen. These weren't your average beasts, mind you, but comrades in arms as they had shed blood and sweat on the battlefield together. Their wills were tougher than ever. It came as no surprise that no one believed Zhuofan was up to the task. Have it your way. Zhuofan snorted inside, took all the spiritual beasts in his eyes, and his grin spread wider and wider. Tuoba Liufeng's instincts kicked in and his heart shuddered. As for the cause of the queasiness, he had no idea. Shove off. Zhuofan's eyes glinted azure along with his bark. It rang louder and louder in the spiritual beasts' ears. It was then that a ripple swept across them. The still cheerful spiritual beasts froze and their riders looked down stunned before the riders could even grab their mane. The beasts were howling away under the stunned gazes of everyone. The 1,000 spiritual beasts scampered off towards the city gates, running for their lives, paying no heed to the riders' orders. Something of incredible dread and terror consumed their minds, driving them insane and leaving them with only the instinct of fleeing. The bond between man and beast, forged in the thick of battle, through happiness and sadness, now laid broken. What the hell? Stop this instant. Tuoba Liufeng's mount was also frantic, but no matter what he said, it wouldn't listen, so he took to the sky, watching the 1,000 beasts on the ground stampeding for the gates, the 6 5th-level spiritual beasts included. It only took a second for them to clear the city. They left behind a bunch of rattled and sorry-ass riders, with an unlucky few trampled under the horde, ending up with broken bones by the dozen. There was not a face out there in another state than bugged out and slack-jawed. Except, of course, Long Xingyun's gang on the second floor, who only chuckled. They had been through this kind of thing back in the esoteric debate, where Zhuofan scared away the bloodcrocs with a glare. Using savage beasts in front of Zhuofan was like asking for a beat-down. Quanrong Empire, founded on beastmasters, had met their nemesis in Zhuofan. The 6 people in the air faced this incredulous, inconceivable, and preposterous scene with blank minds. Tuoba Liufeng even looked at his sister. Liuner, you're the best at controlling beasts. Just what is going on here? How should I know? Tuoba Liuner soured for a second, then recalled something. He squinted at Zhuofan for a whole 15 minutes before crying. It's you. Zhuofan turned towards her. Someone from Quanrong knows me? Zhuofan took a single look at her, and his heart started beating a mile a minute. She was that same girl he had saved back in Beast King Mountain, the one he had swindled out of the Shaping Spring. She had stuck her claim on. Oh, so she's from the Quanrong Empire. Perhaps he didn't care then to look closer, or it's been too long that he didn't spot her. When the Quanrong got here, all he cared about was their level. He had no intention to care about some woman's looks, unlike that loaf Long Xingyun, who could tell on the spot how many moles a girl had. Tuoba Liuner hadn't guessed either, since Zhuofan now had a thick mane of white hair. But the instant Zhuofan scared the beasts off, she was brought back to Beast King Mountain. On a closer look, she figured him out. The two stared off, in silence and puzzlement. Who is he? What is he doing in the imperial capital? Whose house's steward is he? So the girl is a Quanrong. But what was she doing on Beast King Mountain, at the time of the esoteric debate no less? Does it have something to do with the Quanrong delegation's aim for coming here? Zhuofan pondered on the second floor. Luo Yunchang's face was hard. That rotten, stinking prick. He knows another lady. Sigh. Another hottie falls into Brother's clutches. I admit defeat. Long Xingyun sat back with hands behind his head. Just how many chicks does Brother's know anyway? For him to get close to even the Quanrong Empire's girls, he is one Casanova. Liuner, do you know each other? Tuoba Liufeng asked. Taubalianer whispered, "Brother, he is the one I had talked about, the weird one I came across." "What?" Tuoba Liufeng set his bloodthirsty eyes on Zhuo Fan. "There's actually a man in this world with such absolute power over beasts. He is the greatest threat to us. He has to be put down." Chapter 393, Tianyu's Number 1 Thorn. Chapter 393, Tianyu's Number 1 Thorn. Ice-cold and unbridled killing intent shot forth. It stabbed into the people's hearts like biting winds in the coldest winter dam. Tuoba Liufeng is usually calm. Why then, the sudden thirst for blood? Dugafeng grew nervous. Long Xingyun grinned. Why indeed? But even if they show their tough side again, Brother Zhuo is sure to nail them dead. What's there to worry about? That's exactly what I'm afraid of. Who here doesn't know about Zhuo Fan's temper? Irritated enough, those guys won't see tomorrow. If anything happens to them, what will Tuoba Tieshan's 5 million army at the border do? Dugafeng shook his head. The rest stirred. Makes sense. Zhuo Fan merely curled an eyebrow in glee. Come on, make a move already. Zhalahan, Zhabi, Falcon formation. We'll do it in one move. Tuoba Liufeng's eyes trembled watching Zhuo Fan coldly. The masked man nodded, and Zhalahan was exuberant. His flesh trembling in joy. Imperial tutor Han Tianma wasn't quite in agreement. Liufeng, we don't know what he can do or who's behind him. Attacking him rashly is thoughtless. Him being a threat is enough. He has got to go now, or our beast armies will suffer. Tuoba Liufeng set his jaw. We are in an altercation with him now. This is the best excuse to ice him. When we see Tianyu's emperor later, we'll just say that the guy got too confident of his blue blood in stopping us and got killed by a stray attack. Han Tianma nodded after a long pause, but his heart was still unsettled from the moment he had laid eyes on Zhuo Fan. The imperial tutor felt a thorn in his heart. This was his intuition he had built over the decades. Thinking of the last time this feeling came, it was when he met Zhuge Changfeng. Sigh, Tianyu has so many talents. Han Tianma noticed the sharp look in Zhuo Fan's eyes and sighed. Attack. Zhalahan laughed, going after Zhuo Fan with bloodshot eyes, his face twisted and savage. Zhabi took out a glittering golden longbow, pulling the string like second nature as he aimed for Zhuo Fan. Snickering, Zhuo Fan flicked his right hand in contempt. Stop. An aged voice towered over the commotion, and Zhuo Fan was found overshadowed by a figure pointing his long blade at the six. Tuoba Liufeng, Han Tianma, what do you think you're doing? Rumble. Zhalahan paused at his arrival. Tuoba Liufeng sighed in the end. Withdraw? Zhabi figured that was the case and put away his bow. Tuoba Liufeng cupped his hands at the towering figure. Expressing respect for once, Marshal Dugu, it's been ages. With the two nations tangled up in war for decades, the commanders had long since grown accustomed to one another, forming mutual respect. A hero valued another, regardless of which side they were on. Quanrong's entire leadership present here showed their respect to the man called Dugazhantian at the arrival of the marshal. Everyone sighed. Knowing the fight was a bust, Jalan snorted, unwilling to let Zhuo Fan just walk away. Zhuo Fan couldn't care less. Oh, he did find it a darn shame as well, having lost the chance to probe them well, though not a complete waste of time, as he did get a ballpark figure. Marshal Dugu, how can your people lack even common decency? We represent the Quanrong Emperor in presenting your nation's majesty with a gift. Is this how a host acts? Scaring our mounts and harming our warriors? Taubalianer glared at Zhuo Fan while hurling her accusations. The way she figured was, with Dugu Zhantian's position in Tianyu, if he didn't give Zhuo Fan a heavy punishment, he'd at least give him something. Maybe a slap on the wrist? That would settle her current and past hatred nicely. Ashamed, Dugu Zhantian saw Zhuo Fan lollygagging behind, sloppy, bored, and uninterested. The perfect picture of an innocent bystander. Sighing, the old man went in the air towards the six. The six were still very much respectful as Dugu Zhantian whispered, Imperial tutor, Tuoba Liufeng, seeing you far away guess, I'll give you a good-natured suggestion. Forget about your rancor and drop this issue here, for your sake. You can't mess with that guy. The six were startled, looking at Zhuo Fan in shock. The Grand Marshal of Tianyu was dead serious, even advising them against pushing it. As the Quanrong delegation, they represented their empire. No matter which noble or powerful figure appeared, Everyone ought to show a modicum of decency to pave the way to the nation's peace talks, and Dugu Zhantian was a man above a sea of people in Tianyu, respected and admired. Who would dare put on a tough front in front of him? But the way he had worded his advice and his tone all pointed towards the fact that the kid downstairs was above his station. Who the hell is this guy? After one last look at Liufeng, they snapped their evil glares behind them on obscure wolf. Just how do you gather intel when you missed such a glaring threat? Hu Lianchai was downcast too, returning an angry stare, then lowering his head in shame. Well, he did have a look at all of Tianyu's great men and houses. But who knew where this brat had popped out of, having such godlike power? Marshal Dugu, who is he? How come even you are reluctant to face him? Taobaliener asked. The rest of them put on the same inquisitive expression as well. Dugu Zhantian sighed. I am not reluctant, but simply find him a pain, a thorn to avoid. The second prince stepped on his toes, and he leveled his home. You are the Quanrong, and I fear that if anything happens to you, it will plunge our nation into a bitter war. I can't have that. Ha ha ha. You must be thinking I stopped you for his sake, right? When I was in fact helping you. Rumble. All of their minds were shell-shocked at the impact this news had. Dugu Zhantian had revealed two crucial pieces of info. Liufeng's authority in Tianyu burst at the seams to ignore the emperor and kick a prince around. Second was Liufeng's power. Not even the six of them could stop him, but instead might end up with casualties and worsening the ties between nations. Why is it that we've never heard a word of such a valiant character? On cue, they glanced at Hu Lianchai again, but the guy wiggled his body away and avoided the stabbing gazes. He wished he could stuff his head in his pants from shame. How mortifying for an intelligence officer. Let me take you to the Imperial Palace. Now remember, keep your distance as much as possible. Dugu Zhantian sighed, then flew towards Liufeng. Kid, I don't care what happened. Just please let this one go on my account. They are our guests. Liufeng nodded. Fine. Since the old marshal asked, I will. Please do pass this along. This is my turf and not their backyard to jaywalk. Liufeng was talking to Dugu Zhantian. Sure, but he was so loud even deaf geezers could hear him, and before he forgot, he left the six with a middle finger as goodbye, making the six face boil in rage. Only then he sauntered off to Yun Shuang, taking her through the Quanrong army like a champ. The men pranked by Liufeng were wailing. And now that he was parading among them, their anger pushed them to the edge, but without the six orders, neither budged an inch. Forced to let Liufeng's group swag their way across, he didn't leave them in the dust, but sure as hell left the Quanrong army without an ounce of dignity. Awesome. Long Xingyun gave a thumbs up. Sticking close to Brother Zhua is the best. Dugufeng sighed. Thank God Godfather mediated before the matter escalated. This maverick demonic dragon was assumed to be the wolves' next meal, yet now they were the ones left whimpering. Dugu Zhantian shook his head and led the outraged Quanrong six to the Imperial Palace. Only this time, the six no longer had their cocky attitude, not after the bruises their pride took just a while back. Not in their dreams had they thought it humanly possible that in this trip to Tianyu, while they had barely crossed the city gates, they would be molded into shape. Forget about dignity, they had lost all self-respect. Meanwhile, Prime Minister Zhuge Changfeng and all the officials stood before the Imperial Palace's gates. They had waited and waited, until finally, by some miracle, the Quanrong arrived. Except the six behind Dugu Zhantian, the rest looked like shuffling and dragging their feet. Some even had to be carried face twitching. The Minister of War whispered, Prime Minister, are they the Quanrong? Why do they look like stragglers from a routed army? Zhuge Changfeng pondered and soon came to a conclusion with a smile. Ha ha ha. I believe they were indeed routed. I reckon they went head-to-head with Tianyu's #1 Thorn. The officials were stunned, then snickered inside. This new generation? Chapter 394, Same Side. Chapter 394, Same Side. Zhuge Changfeng welcomed them. Ignoring their sorry states out of respect, he led them inside the Imperial Palace, where a feast was held along with the officials. With how the Emperor's birthday had yet to come, the Emperor wasn't present after the feast. The delegation was taken to their quarters. Outside Imperial Palace they stayed silent all this time. A veiled contempt at Tianyu's lavish and exaggerated style. You had us coming all this way, and now you want us out? We didn't even see the Emperor yet. That's a custom for you. Going in for a feast is having good manners. But you're not the big cheese here to live in the fancy and grand imperial palace. Quanrong's 6 leaders entered a high-class tavern, while the soldiers were housed in garrisons guarded by Delegation army. He said guarding, but it wasn't much different from keeping an eye on them to curb any violent behavior on Quanrong's part in the dead of night. A slim figure dodged the patrols and sneaked up to a lit-up house, knocking twice. "Brother, it's me." The door opened just a crack and the figure slipped right in. Looking up, she was no other than Tuoba and her 6 people were in the room, the leaders of the Quanrong Empire's delegation, and one who had yet to reveal his face. "Who is he?" Tuoba pointed at the robed person Tuoba Liufeng, and the imperial tutor exchanged a smile when the hooded figure raised his head. He spoke in a familiar tone. "Ha ha ha, Miss Liufen. We've been chatting all day at the feast, yet you've already forgotten me?" "SSS." Tuoba glanced at the aged man and stuttered. "Zhuge Changfeng? What are you?" "Liufen, don't make a fuss. Prime Minister Zhuge," her brother smiled, "is on the same side as us." "What?" Tuoba stared at Zhuge Changfeng for a good while, not quite able to wrap her head around that notion. The great leader of Tianyu's 4 pillars was on Quanrong's side. Zhuge Changfeng smiled at her obvious confusion. "Miss Liufen, I and your esteemed father, imperial tutor and your emperor, have been in secret contact for decades." Liufen blinked her big pretty eyes, turning to her brother, only to find him nodding. "Now a believer," she said. "I finally get why you were so confident in this mission. You had Prime Minister Zhuge on the inside. He's the one you called the most reliable spy." Tuoba Liufeng merely grinned. He then said, "Prime Minister, sir, has there been no changes to the plan? I get the feeling the situation in Tianyu has gone through upheaval." "Ha ha, the young general is keen. It has indeed been so over these past few years. Our plan will just have to keep up with the times." Zhuge Changfeng nodded. "Worry not, though. The stage has changed in our favor and not against it." "How can you be so sure?" Han Tianma said. Zhuge Changfeng had a confident smile. The original plan was to use the Centennial Jubilee as an excuse to bring high-ranked Quanrong into the imperial capital. When the time is right, Commander Tuoba will put pressure on the borders, taking Delegation away and leaving the playing field open for the Regent estate to incite chaos in its conquest of the houses. With the Emperor's men busy with the mess, he'll have no one next to him, giving us the perfect opportunity to cut his head. The plan was 90% assured of success. Once the Emperor falls, the rest will follow. With no support, the veteran Delegation will be beaten back as well. At this point, the Quanrong army will have free rein to go across the country, with Tianyu all for the taking. The crucial point is for all these scenarios to happen at the same time. By the time the Empire's 3 guardian sects find out, it'll be too late. We'll just give them a little something to soothe them later, and Tianyu will be ours. Yes, that's the original plan. But what has changed? Han Tianma asked. Zhuge Changfeng's eyes flashed. This change came out of the blue to everyone. Tianyu no longer has 7 noble houses, rather 8. It is now in an even more tangled mess, with 3 factions in a deadlock. Even the ambitious Regent estate finds this situation hard to overcome. "How can't?" Tuoba Liufeng was frantic. Zhuge Changfeng gave him a long look. "Actually, you've already met with the 8th house today. Luo clan, led by that steward, Zhuefan." "Zhuefan? The same one who blocked us?" Everyone cried out. Tuoba Liufeng thirsted for blood. "He can't be left alive. Since they are foiling our plan, then we will help Regent estate in rooting them out." "Young Master Tuoba, take it easy." Zhuge Changfeng threw a mocking smile. If Zhuefan was such an easy target, he'd be dead ages ago. With all due respect, as you are now, facing Zhuefan will end with you all getting annihilated. Each of them was shocked and looked at Zhuge Changfeng incredulously. Tuoba snapped. "Prime Minister Zhuge is trying to scare us. I've met with Zhuefan before. He is strong, yes, but not invincible. Jalahan or Zhabi, in fact, anyone here can easily kill him. With 2 against him, he is sure to breathe his last for good." Jalahan and Zhabi swelled with pride. "We ain't top Quanrong warriors for nothing." Zhuge Changfeng shook his head. Ha ha, Miss Leonor. When did you meet him? What was his cultivation? Around a year ago. He was a peak bone-tempering cultivator then. Tuoba Leonor recalled. Now that he's in the third layer of profound heaven stage, it proves he's incredible, but nothing we can't handle. Zhuge Changfeng sighed. Anything can change, given enough time. For a monster like Zhuofan, a year is more than enough. Ha ha ha. Look beyond his low cultivation. Pitting your radiant stage experts against him is overconfidence and blind ambition. You're setting yourself up for failure. Zhalahan and Zhubi glowered as Zhuge Changfeng continued uncaringly and spoke with an exceedingly cold gaze. Not to mention, Tianyu's every faction is in a deadlock. Looks quiet from the outside, but a storm is brewing underneath the surface. It's the best time for our plan. And the best candidate to break the stalemate is none other than the dauntless Zhuofan. You can't touch him before that, understand? Zhuge Changfeng's speech ended with a command, not something the Quanrong's top dogs would be keen to readily accept. Only Han Tianma was pensive before nodding. You know the situation better than us. We will listen to the Prime Minister. Zhuge Changfeng nodded pleased. He chatted for a while longer, and then slipped away. His two elders were waiting outside with Zhuge Changfeng gone. Zhalan was the first to act out. Imperial tutor, young master, are we just going to do what the old fox said? We have no choice. We are strangers in a strange land and shouldn't act on a whim. Han Tianma said, Obscure wolf, you have 3 days to find out about Tianyu's latest events. And this time, don't let the factions' relations and their actions escape your notice. Face red, Hu Lianshai bowed and left in the pitch-black night. Meanwhile, in the Imperial Palace's study, the Emperor was reading the reports when a repartee came. A black figure kneeled. Your Majesty, news has come that the Quanrong delegation is housed. Also, the Prime Minister has made contact. The Emperor's beard shook and he grinned. Ha ha ha, it has finally begun. The Emperor took black and white pieces from a chess box beside him and threw them on the ground. The pieces are in play. All that's left is a checkmate. At the parish's observatory, Yun Shuang inspected the sky with the heaven communing apparatus. Zhuofan stood watch with a frown, replaying today's events. That Quanrong girl in particular kept coming back to him. The heaven communing apparatus stopped and Yun Shuang looked winded, with faint sweat on her brow. How is it, Shuanger? Any changes for the better? Zhuofan asked, shaking her head. Shuanger was grave. Not only there are no changes for the better, but the crouching dragon looks more imposing, ready to take flight. Zhuofan knew it to be the sign of being on the brink of ruling this land. In other words, Quanrong's arrival made the imperial family more powerful. That's terribly strange, unless... Zhuofan's eyes glinted. Yun Shuang begged, Steward Zhua, this sight has shown me that the land will be in even more chaos. The people will be in pain, suffering, and will be wretched. I beg of you, please save them. You alone can change this fate. Yun clan people are so strange. You've set aside your revenge for your kin and instead care for others. Zhuofan grinned. No worries, you are with me now. I will help you achieve your wish. No, it's for the people, Yun Shuang justified. Zhuofan teased. I'll do it for you, but don't feel like doing the same for the people. Now, who do you want me to do it for again? For me, blushing, Yun Shuang lowered her head. Zhuofan laughed. His mind filled with constant thoughts. Everyone is dead, focused on the Luo clan. Chapter 395, Picking a Spot. Chapter 395, Picking a Spot. For 3 days, the Quanrong delegation was confined to the garrisons. Lacking the Emperor's direct summons, the guards looked dangerously close to wardens. By now they were bored out of their minds, waiting for Hu Lianshai to send back something, anything. With a ripple, a tall wall of the courtyard wiggled at one spot, followed by the sneaky Hu Lianshai finally making his appearance with no guard being any wiser. Tuoba Liufeng signaled them to get back in the room to discuss. Hu Lianshai, have you found out Tianyu's situation? Tuoba Liufeng asked. Hu Lianshai gave a heavy nod and saluted. Young master, Tianyu is just like we've learnt from Prime Minister Zhuge, having experienced great change. All brought upon by the same man that stopped our march, Zhuofan. He is a hard man to deal with. Tuoba Liufeng raised an eyebrow, staring him in the eye and motioning to continue. After taking a moment to organize his thoughts from his overexcited heart, Hu Lianchai stressed every word. Based on my investigation, there was no 8th noble house 8 years ago, but a nameless third-rate clan. But under Steward Zhu's leadership, this clan struck like lightning, killing everyone in their path to reach the status of 8th noble house. He is a rare talent, with a sharp mind and boundless might. Hu Lianchai gave a systematic recount of the clan's history, sighing now and then, but all out of respect and fear. The narration took half a day. Everyone watched him blankly, their lips dry, unable to believe. Tuoba, Liufeng, and Imperial Tutor were downright plagued with worry in less than a decade. He had raised a third-rate clan into a house, even surpassing their 1,000-year-old legacy. This man was a true rarity. He wasn't just some guy with a gimmick, but an unheard-of genius in the truest sense of the word. Hu Lianchai, are you sure you aren't wrong? How could this have happened? How is he so strong? Zhao Lahan protested in his denial, rolling his eyes. Hu Lianchai was just as bitter. Do you think I want to believe this fairy tale? Am I that much of a fool? Everyone on the streets knows about this, down to the last bum. I am forced to believe it. That's why Zhuge Changfeng told us to stay clear of him. He is a serious threat. It's best we follow his advice for now. Han Tianma said. Tuoba. Liufeng squinted while pondering but nodded. In the end, he will become our end if we don't get rid of him. But with how few we are, it'll be hard if he possesses the skills they say he does. We need to think of the bigger picture. Tuoba. Liufeng had to accept it no matter how much it pained him. Zhao Lahan was completely against it still. Didn't Tuoba Lianer just say that me and GB are enough to waste him? This is absurd. The young commander had complete trust in the 8 Wolf Wardens. Any impossible mission would be completed once they stepped in. So why was it that against a Tianyu whelp, he had lost all confidence? Zhao Lahan grumbled inside, glancing at GB. From his icy look, he figured the guy was of the same mind. Now we know Tianyu's situation and need only to wait for the Emperor's summons. Hu Lianchai, resume scouting and report anything you find, even rumors. The rest of you are dismissed. Understood. Tuoba. Liufeng had them all withdraw. Hu Lianchai bowed as they all went their separate ways, and Hu Lianchai was all hush-hush in his sneaking out. Someone called out, Hu Lianchai, wait. Hu Lianchai turned to see Tuoba Lianer bringing Zhao Lahan and Zhibi. He bowed. Young miss, do you need me? Hu Lianchai, your stealth cultivation method is rare in this world. Can you also take us along? Lianer looked at him with hope flashing in her eyes. Hu Lianchai frowned. Young miss, are you? Ha ha ha. To be perfectly honest, old pal, we want to get rid of that insufferable prick. Zhao Lahan shouted, his face twisted with malice. Hu Lianchai paled. You can't. Let's say the rumors about him are inflated, but that doesn't mean you can beat him. We still don't know what he did to reach such a high position, all by himself too. Moving without the Imperial Tutor and young master's consent will affect the plan. We can't take responsibility for that. I just can't take you. The three nodded, figuring as much. Still, Tuoba Lianer continued, then we won't kill him, and we'll just teach him a lesson. Hu Lianchai, you've heard it as well, how brother isn't confident in you 8 Wolf Wardens. We have to prove him wrong, to wash away this shame as Quanrong warriors. What if the kid is as godlike as they say? Enough ifs. Rumors always tend to exaggerate. When have you seen someone that strong around? Taking the attacks of 2 peak radiant stage experts at the 3rd layer of profound heaven stage? That's inhuman. Tuoba Lianer cut him off with a strong objection. Zhao Lahan, with your innate power, you've lived among spiritual beasts deep in the mountains until 20. Can you do it? Do you believe such a ridiculous thing actually took place on this earth? Zhao Lahan shook his head with a smile. Young miss, I don't mean to brag, but I have yet to find someone who can survive my strength. When I entered the Radiant stage, I could handle a peak Radiant stage body cultivator's attack, while 2 would be somewhat harder. This is why I do not give credence to what Hu Lianchai says about the prick's masterstroke. It is a fantasy, a made-up fairy tale. Yeah, I've met the guy, and even though he is fast at cultivation, that doesn't make him invincible. We're only going to expose the charlatan for who he is and showcase the divine might of Quanrong. Tuoba Lianer's face was filled with pride. Not to mention that bastard was mean to me back in Beast King Mountain. He even stole my stuff. And I'm supposed to just let him get away with it? We, Quanrong, are no pushovers. Hu Lianshai nodded. They were warriors who didn't know how to retreat. Of course they'd be sure to vent their mistemper tantrum with no more preamble. Hu Lianshai nodded. All right, young miss, enter my beast-holding ring. I'll take you out. Isaac Lint, Taubalianer, and the other two perked up in a flash of white. Hu Lianshai had them tucked away. Hu Lianshai's figure shimmered, and he soon blended in with nature, moving around like a heat wave. Meanwhile, in the region of Prosperity's compound's garden, Zhua Fan was sipping green tea under a pavilion. In front of him were a handful of rocks scattered around on the table. Zhua Fan was steadily looking at them. Steward Zhua, what's on your mind? A soft voice broke his reverie, noticing Yun Shuang coming over. The stones had names on them, to which Yun Shuang said, I see. Steward Zhua is brainstorming how to get out of this impasse. Yeah, the four factions, including Quanrong, are now in a standoff. Zhua Fan smiled, sipping his tea, and weighed a rock. Neither side wants the deadlock to persist, looking for a palooka so hard in the head that he'd smash this stalemate wide open. But who'd be willing to become the eye of the storm, the public enemy number one, whose fate is to be torn to shreds? Yun Shuang looked at him at a loss. Scratching her head, Zhua Fan smiled. I didn't want to do it, but Shuanger, what I understood from your readings is that all these insidious players have one thing in common. They all want to make me the scapegoat. Such a fate is hard to change, even if I'm willing. Yun Shuang saw the look in his eyes and started to worry. Zhua Fan laughed at her look. Relax, since I know heaven's direction, I'll just move against the grain. They want me to become the center of it all. That's fine by me. They'll just have to witness the second coming of Gu Santong. But unlike him, I'm not one to fall so easily. Zhua Fan snickered. Yun Shuang sighed. She had yet to get used to seeing his evil grin, but felt at ease knowing Zhua Fan had made up his mind. Yoning took this moment to make her presence noticed. In her fashionable and cross-gender, cross-cultural, cross-age, cross-dressing, scholarly getup, Shuanger, Zhua Fan, to celebrate Imperial Father's centennial jubilee, the Imperial capital is holding a lantern festival. Let's all go. You sneaked out again? Zhua Fan was in no mood, not interested. Yoning deflated and turned to Yun Shuang. As the good sister she was, Yun Shuang knew what Yoning was thinking. Steward Zhua, the Imperial capital is in turmoil, and for two weak girls to go alone. Fine, fine. You're an asset I have to protect and keep close. Zhua Fan waved to her and shook his head. The girls hid a sneaky smile. Chapter 396, Ambush at Lantern Festival. Chapter 396, Ambush at Lantern Festival. On the night of the Lantern Festival, you couldn't swing a dead cat without hitting someone. With their emperor's birthday fast approaching, the buildings were decorated with lanterns, turning the capital into a breathtaking scene. Many romantics and couples took full advantage of this rare occasion to get together and whisper sweet nothings to their better half. Then again, an exception was almost guaranteed to exist. Sticking out like a sore thumb was a guy with white hair, surrounded by three bells and at the admiration of the crowd. Buddy, you're one daring trailblazer on the righteous path of love. We, poor fellows, only date one on the night of Lantern Festival, while you've come out with three. I tip my hat to you, sir. The eerie looks came everywhere he went. Zhua Fan's face was twitching looking at the girls with a sigh. Yongning wanted to come with Yun Shuang, but since Luo Yunchang overheard them, she just had to join. She even shot down anyone else who wanted to join them, lest they became a third wheel. Sister, please, isn't it already a crowd with three girls in tow? Zhua Fan rolled his eyes, hearing the bubbly girls giggle and chatter. All this time he was sighing and sighing. At some point, a sharp and heavy sound came, followed by a mighty pressure clearly focused on Zhua Fan. Dodge. Zhua Fan waved at the girls, sweeping them off their feet and sending them 100 meters away. Youngning ended up sputtering dust from the maltreatment. She slapped the ground, getting to her feet, and told him off. Zhua Fan, what the hell is wrong with you? She was royally pissed. Here she was taking the guy on a night out and earning some brownie points, and the twit had sent her flying. That's no way to treat a friend, especially a princess. But noticing that Zhua Fan was staring at the sky, she did as well and gasped. The other girls paled as well, filled with worry for Zhua Fan. A bludgeon, easily 10 meters in diameter, came smashing on Zhua Fan's head. On the other end of the mace was Zhao Lahan, With bloodshot eyes and a malignant face, he wanted to flatten Juefan in one strike. You pompous cretin, weren't you godlike? Try this on for size. Jalahan cackled inside. The average people participating in the lovely festival shivered all over and scurried for their lives. Where did that meteor come from? It'll ruin the celebration. The ever-cold Juefan flicked his Qilin arm, now shining red. Bam! Juefan smacked the bludgeon into the pavement, sending an earthquake that flattened anything in its path. Destroying the lanterns, the girls flew again from the shock wave, with blood coming from their mouths. Finally recovering their wits after the fall, they found a dozens of meter-wide crater at the epicenter. The golden bludgeon stood there majestic, and Juefan was buried under it. Juefan. The girls' cries went unanswered. Jalahan floated above, pleased as punch, holding the mace. Ha ha ha. I knew you weren't up to snuff. One smash and I've plastered you. I should have just used a third of my power instead. Jalahan. A figure flashed above the mace. Tuoba. Look what you've done. Didn't we say we're only teaching him a lesson? Why kill him? And there's not even a corpse left. How will we explain this to the others? Shrugging, Jalahan chuckled. It's not my fault that the brat was weak and was posing around with that cocky attitude. What, taking 2 peak radiant stage experts attacks? That was clearly a lie. If I had known he was a wimp, an average profound heaven cultivator, I'd have used only 1%. Humph, he had it coming. That's besides the point. It was us who acted first. With such a ruckus, our plan. Tuoba face bombed. Her rant came to a halt when a casual voice said, "What is your plan?" The two watched the massive bludgeon rocking, unleashing heavy tremors. Why, young miss, that power. Jalahan felt himself being lifted along with his arm. No matter what he did to stop it, the force came from the crater, and he realized that he didn't have enough strength to fight it. This is impossible. Since when did the world have such a mighty being? Jalahan narrowed his eyes and watched Juefan lifting the mace up with one hand, like a giant holding the heavens. His casual look gave the feeling that he wasn't even pushing it. Juefan. The girls cheered. Tuoba pointed with a trembling finger. He's still alive and not a scratch on him. Jalahan. Use everything to push him back. I already am. Gnashing his teeth, Jalahan's face twisted as he swelled under the strain. But no amount of strength proved to be of any use. Still being unable to budge the mace, Tuoba paled, looking at Juefan like he was a monster. Can the rumors be true? Does he truly surpass the strongest of our people, Jalahan? She used to think that her father's savage wolf was the strongest person there was. But today, Juefan was handling him like a child. Juefan put on a savage grin. This doesn't look like a good place to chat. That makes this stick an eyesore. With a cold glint, Juefan gripped harder. Crack. Snapping sounds jarred the ears of everyone as the bludgeon was covered in fractures. Juefan added just a hint more oomph, and the giant stick fell into pieces. Everyone watched in stunned silence. The Quanrong were even more shocked. The purple gold-forged heaven-breaking bludgeon was a 5th-grade spiritual weapon, and this guy used his brawn alone to crush it in his hand. What is he? Jalahan's face was unnatural, to say the least. He had never heard of such freakish power and was now shocked to his core. As a typical narcissist, he took it upon himself as being the best there was, only to face the harsh and cruel reality. There would always be someone better. Jabi and Hu Lianchai acted as spectators, scared out of their minds. The rumors didn't even do Juefan's power justice. That damn hearsay is asking us to get beat. In what way is he any weaker? Hu Lianchai felt like crying. His intel gathering had hit a snag again. Juefan drifted over to a panicked Tuoba, his smile wide and creepy. About that plan of yours, care to fill me in? Gulping, Tuoba was lost for words in fear. Jalahan sweated buckets, his eyes only reflecting fear. But he wasn't part of the 8 wolf wardens for nothing. He wouldn't give up just like that. It went double for when his young miss was under threat. While Juefan was focused on Lianer, he took out an identical bludgeon. After a short wind-up, he socked Juefan's head with it. Juefan never even looked, merely flicking it away in pieces while the weapon's owner's arm snapped from the power running through the crumbling bludgeon. Jalahan still hadn't woken up to smell the roses. A mere wave from Juefan broke Quanrong's best warrior's arm like a twig. This freak is not human. He is worse than a spiritual beast. Jalahan's arm dangled while he sweated like a pig. His heart was consumed by fear and in denial of what was right in front of him. It took a long time for it to sink in. The fear, the dread, the futility of it all. Taubalianer gave the wretched Jalahan a long look, then looked at the grinning Liufeng. The poor girl was about to cry. She was really regretting it now, messing with a monster without rhyme or reason. Jibi at the side had his bow and arrow primed, aimed between Liufeng's eyes. He was also soaked in sweat. It was sky-piercing Wolf's first time facing such a thorn.